Majority Report with Sam Cedar.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Cedar.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Cedar.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Tuesday, March 10th, 2020. My name is Sam Cedar. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We're broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America. Downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Dave Weigel of the Washington Post on the 3M Plus Tuesday, as we've dubbed it. It's not its real name. About 7, what do we have? 7 primaries tonight? Why'd you make that face, Brendan? 6. Idaho, Michigan, Mississippi, Missouri, North Dakota, and Washington State. We will be doing live coverage tonight, starting at about 7:45 p.m. Eastern. Also on the program, Sanders calls for free coronavirus vaccines. Biden makes it to a rally. He also says he'd veto Medicare for all if both a Democratic Senate and House passed it. All right. Circuit breaker hits Wall Street yesterday as coronavirus fears spread across the country. Trump proposes a payroll tax cut and corporate bailouts to stimulate the economy. Meanwhile, in Detroit, in anticipation of trying to fight coronavirus, restores water and adds a moratorium to shutoffs. Here's a suggestion: make it permanent moratorium. How about just giving people water in their homes?
Communism.
Crazy. Then of course, the state would have control of the means of producing clean hands. All of Italy on COVID-19 lockdown and suspends all mortgage payments. Yeah. The new chief of staff, Mark Meadows, has self-quarantined because of fears he may have contracted COVID-19 at the very moment the chief of staff he replaced was at CPAC saying that it was a hoax. Also from CPAC, Gates and Cruz now self-quarantine themselves. Even though Gates the other day thought it was a hoax, so much so that he was wearing... Do we have pictures of that?
Yeah.
Did we pull those pictures? State Department wants to list a white supremacist group a terror organization. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau claims that the Fifth Third Bank pulled a Wells Fargo and opened banked accounts for customers. That's always helpful. They're not only anticipating needs that you didn't even know you had, they're going ahead and charging you for them when you don't even realize that they're fulfilling that need.
It's the future.
Yep, there it is. It's like AI, but we still sort of silly call it theft, I think is what we call it.
It's weird how AI doesn't seem to be saving regular people any money.
It will. Believe me. It will.
Seems to be better than the opposite.
So, folks, like I say, we'll get to this. I don't want to do this now. Like I say, we have primary day today. It is I don't know if it's like do or die, it may be somewhere between make or break or do or die in terms of Washington and Michigan. If Sanders loses Michigan and loses Washington, I mean, if Sanders gets swept tonight, it's really hard to see a path to victory. I don't know. I think, if I'm the Sanders campaign, I want to do well enough to be able to stay in and have this debate with Joe Biden. And frankly, if I'm Bernie Sanders, I want to stay in and have that debate anyways, because the presidential platform has been, I think, for him, or the presidential campaign, I think for him, has always been a means in which to build a movement. And to have that debate, I think, would be helpful in that regard. We will have time, and I'm going to do my best to avoid talking about, what is really a mystery, may be a little bit strong for me, but what has been a somewhere between a mystery to me and a genuine surprise, and maybe an understanding of Elizabeth Warren's desire not to endorse. Well, first of all, not to endorse Sanders, and frankly, for that matter, to endorse it all. And I have some thinking on that. On Friday, we're going to have Ryan Grimm on, a good person to talk to, I think, about this. So I may save those for then, but we'll see. I have a feeling tonight, after a couple of drinks, I might loosen up a little bit, and that's going to happen. But
you're going to be posting snake emojis by the end of the night.
No. I still look. I still have respect for Warren, and because I don't. It's the flip side of me really not having any sort of genuine personal feelings towards politicians, and I judge them really, more or less like I do, I don't know, a computer. There are certain inputs, you get certain outputs, they can do certain things. Some are more reliable than others, and, et cetera, et cetera. And so I don't, I think that there's some clarity as to her agenda. And I think to a certain extent, it is an extension upon my feelings about her skill set and maybe even desire to engage in public facing politics. And that's maybe you want to call it movement politics, however you want to call it. But we'll talk more about that in a bit, because there's one clip that I'm a little bit dubious again, but again, there is a legitimate mystery here. People keep alluding to me on Twitter, and I want to know. And even like the frame. Well, look, we'll talk about it in a bit. I feel like I'm Joe Biden, where it's like I'm just so overwhelmed by all the information that I have to check out, and just like isn't that my time?
Mention the Donbass.
Isn't that my time? That's my time. I'm not going to go over. Of course I will. All right. But speaking of Joe Biden, he did an interview with Lawrence O'Donnell last night. It was also just sort of like, look, this is an interview. I can just tell you, there's no inside information here. I'm just looking at this as a former director and as someone who watches a lot of news. This is a set that has been constructed to make it look like Joe Biden has been president for 2 years. The lighting is much more yellow and moody than you will get in other things. The idea is to make it seem like he is in the this is like a fireside chat type of situation, back from FDR on some level. I mean, just from a lighting perspective. more often than not, these things are more well lit, a little bit brighter when you see these interviews. The idea is also, I think they probably, the Biden people probably said, tone down the lighting a little bit. We don't want anything that looks too harsh. And, you know, look, this may work. You may be able to do this. You know, how many years was it the FDR was, you know, more or less immobile and they hid it from the U.S. public?
Slightly different media environment, though.
It's true, but also maybe less sophisticated in terms of their ability to manipulate these things.
Deep fake Joe through the 4 years. I
think maybe all they're looking to do is 9 months. But here is Joe Biden talking about the Iraq war, he's asked. And look, we're going to then go to a series of clips that Mehdi Hassan put together for The Intercept. We've played, I think, all of these clips in the past, anyways, separately. But he just put one out that was, you know, the issue is not that Joe Biden has gaffes, although that's true. The issue is not that Joe Biden has lost a step, which I think is undeniable, certainly by the reporters who have covered him that have expressed it in, you know, off-the-record situations. But one of the issues is that he is a fabulist. I mean, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he doesn't know he's lying. He wants the truth to be something else. But I lived through this era. I knew where Joe Biden was on Iraq. Here he is telling a slightly different version of what happened in 2002, 2003, 2004.
Killed yesterday in Iraq. You say that your vote on the Iraq war was based on the President Bush's representations, that this wasn't about going to war. It was about presenting a clear, at least, threat to Saddam Hussein. Bernie Sanders says, I saw right through that. I was right. I knew what George Bush was up to. When we look back on it, can we say that Senator Sanders' judgment about that was better than yours?
Look, the reason I voted the way I did was to try to prevent a war from happening because, remember, the threat was to go to war. The argument was because Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. So he said that I need to be able to get the Security Council to agree to send in inspectors to put pressure on Saddam to find out whether or not he's producing nuclear weapons. And at the time, I said, that's your reason. All right, I get it. That was the rationale was that's the way to not go to war, because I didn't believe he had those nuclear weapons. I didn't believe he had those weapons of mass destruction. And you may remember the debates we had after that period about when Colin said, anyway. So that was the rationale. What happened was we went in, determined.
Pause it for 1 second. When Colin said what he was talking about is Colin Powell went in front of the United Nations, held up a vial of talcum powder and said, you know, this is next, anthrax. Larry Wilkinson, who was Colin Powell's second, said that he knew going into that speech where the CIA director at the time, I can't remember his name now, was sitting right behind Colin Powell at the UN. He knew this was a crap show. He knew they were lying on behalf of the administration.
And you may remember the debates we had after that period about when Colin said, anyway. So that was the rationale. What happened was we went in, determined that they hyped what, in fact, was occurring. They didn't. There was no concrete proof of what he was doing, and they still went to war. And the irony of all ironies is the first thing that Barack Obama did when we got elected, president and vice president, was turn to me and say, end the war. Not a joke. You run the deal to bring out 150,000+ combat troops from Iraq. And I did. So, you know, the idea that I took the word of a president saying that he wasn't going to go to war and this was the way to avoid going to war was, in fact, a mistake. It was a mistake. I've acknowledged that 15 years ago. But the idea that Bernie Sanders' judgment on foreign policy is superior to mine, I find I'm anxious to debate him on that question.
Well, you don't need to debate him on that question. You just did. You just did. And after that long filibuster, you swung all the way around and said yes. It was a mistake. I did not have the same judgment of Bernie Sanders at that time. I'll tell you who else you didn't have the same judgment as. Nancy Pelosi, who also knew what you say you knew. There was no nuclear weapons there. There was no mass weapons of mass destruction. Nancy Pelosi, let's pull up her vote. Nancy Pelosi voted against that same resolution. Many people did. Not tons. 133 in Congress, almost exclusively Democrats. I think there was probably one or two. I bet you, Walter Jones from North Carolina at the time was one of those guys who might have voted against it. Biden voted yes. But there were others who said no. If Joe Biden really believed that. But here's the problem with what Joe Biden is saying. He's also lying that 15 years ago he said it was a mistake. The war was launched. Well, 15 years ago, first of all, was 2 years after the war had started. And the idea, though, that he thought that he was just voting to authorize, to leverage to stop the war.
I was calling their bluff.
Yeah, I was calling their, well, what he was doing was, the weapons inspectors went in. They looked at all the sites that the CIA had told them. They said, there's nothing here. Tell us where they are. Tell us where they are, they kept saying. Tell us where they are. And then after a couple of weeks, after I think it was maybe 6 to 8 weeks, the Bush administration just said, you know what? Just get out in 24 hours because we're going to bomb the hell out of everything. Sorry you couldn't find it. We don't want this to go on too much longer. It's going to be obvious we were lying. But let's go here. Mehdi Hassan has pulled the clips to see where Joe Biden was in 1998. And this is a clip of him talking to Scott Ritter, I believe it is, who was a weapons inspector, saying it's not in there. They don't have it. Now, 98 was a little bit earlier, obviously, before this. But then we'll see a clip of Joe Biden 4 months after shock and awe, when we've invaded the country, to see how much regret he has that the Bush administration went to war then.
It's pure misrepresentation. Then there's Iraq, where the former vice president says he only voted for the war because the Bush administration tricked him.
I made a mistake. I said it 14 years ago. I trusted George Bush to keep his word. He said he was not going to go into Iraq.
Except Biden was calling for war with Saddam Hussein in 1998.
The only way we're going to get rid of Saddam Hussein, and it's going to require guys like you in uniform to be back on foot in the desert, taking taking Saddam down.
He also says now that he opposed the Iraq war as soon as it started.
From the moment shock and awe started, from that moment, I was opposed to the effort and I was outspoken.
A complete fabrication. Here he is several months after the invasion began, praising both the war and George Bush.
Some of my own party have said that it was a mistake to go to Iraq in the first place. But the cost of not acting against Saddam, I think, would have been much greater. The President of the United States is a bold leader, and he is popular.
Again, Biden just makes stuff up.
5 months after shock and awe, 5 months after shock and awe, he is still saying that going to war was the right move to do. He was praising George W. Bush. I want to see that debate. But we don't have to. We just witness it. The largest foreign policy failure of this country in 50 years. And he was 100% wrong. And now he's lying about it after the fact. What more debate do you need? How much of what we're dealing with today is a function of that call by Joe Biden? I mean, give me a break. Give me a break.
Do you think there's any way to get this information out to people?
I'm not sure that people
he can just say whatever he wants and people will believe him.
I don't know how much people care.
Oh, I think people care about the Iraq War. Trump ran partly on saying that he was against it. Like, people have lost their taste for empire in general, and the Iraq War is largely considered to be a mistake.
I think
but Donald Trump also, when he contemporaneously was for the Iraq War. I mean, so that's my point, is that like, well, at least now he's saying the right thing. It's annoying. I just, I would.
It'd be nice if we didn't have all the fake candidates distracting from these actual issues with Biden for the last 8 months. But.
It would have been nice, I mean, look, if you're going to interview the guy and the guy's going to make that claim, if you're going to ask the question, know the answer, is what I would say. Hey, folks, I got some decent news for you. Actually, this is good news. Healthy, plant-based, non-toxic cleaning products, they work. And the good ones are actually more enjoyable to use. You don't have to worry that you're poisoning yourself or your kids or whatever it is. The problem is, where do you go? Who do you trust? How do you get this stuff? That's where Grove Collaborative comes in. Grove Collaborative is the online marketplace that delivers all natural home, beauty, and personal care products directly to you. Grove takes the guesswork out of going green because every grove.co, it's grove.co, product is guaranteed to be good for you, your family, your home, and the planet. I got to tell you, right now, obviously, in my household, my kids, they come into the house, they know immediately, wash your hands. And one of the first things I did when we started this regimen is I went on to Grove Collaborative, it's grove.co, and I bought maybe I went overboard, but I bought multiple of those Mrs. Meyer's refillable things for the hand soap. So I got, like I said, maybe went overboard, 4 jugs, but it's delivered right to the house. And I got the rainwater one because I don't like the smells, but for those people who, for whatever reason, like things that smell nice, they have that too. They have the lavender, they have the verbena, I think the geranium. I can't remember what the other ones are. But for me, I am strictly rainwater is about as smell as I want. But it's a great place for soaps, for cleaning things. They have a Grove concentrate cleaner. It's the only thing I will use now in my house, my apartment, I should say. And the guide is incredibly helpful that they have there as to what kind of products you're looking for. It's incredibly helpful. You can join over 2 million lifetime customers. They trust a Grove Collaborative to make their homes happier, healthier, cleaner, plus shipping fast, free on your first order. And for a limited time, when listeners go to grove.co/majority, that's grove.co/majority, you're going to get a free 5-piece cleaning set from Mrs. Meyer's and Grove. It's a $30 value. Go to grove.co/majority to get this exclusive cleaning offer. Grove.co/majority. Check it out. Meanwhile, designed with measurements from millions of women, Third Love's bra styles are made to fit your life. They have over 80 bra sizes, but know that the only one that matters is yours. I am not a bra user, but I do have a testimonial from our designated Majority Report bra user. And she writes, the idea that I had 60 days to try out the bras drew me in. But I have to say, in the end, I don't think I've ever had a better experience buying clothing online, certainly not when it comes to bras. The Fit Finder worked like a charm. The choice of styles, amazing. Both the bras I ordered were a perfect fit. They're incredibly comfortable. They are cute and they are subtle. I love them. There you have it, folks. This is the hands down the most comfortable bra you will own. Straps that won't slip, tagless labels, lightweight memory foam cups to mold to your shape. Plus, returns and exchanges are free and easy. And as our bra trier said, Third Love's perfect fit promise means that every customer has 60 days to wear it, wash it, and put it to the test. And if you don't love it, you return it. Third Love will wash it and then donate it to a woman in need. Third Love knows there's a perfect bra for everyone. So right now, they're offering my listeners 15% off your first order. Go to thirdlove.com/majority now to find your perfect fitting bra. Get 15% off your first purchase. That's thirdlove.com/majority for 15% off today. Lastly, VPN, it protects your privacy and security online, but this is what it will also do. It'll take your TV watching to the next level. Because a VPN basically hides your identity and your location and all of this data, you can use it to unlock movies and shows that are only available in other countries. With ExpressVPN, you can binge shows like Doctor Who on UK Netflix. All you do is you use the ExpressVPN app to change your location to the UK. ExpressVPN hides your IP address and lets you control where you want sites to think you're located. You can choose from almost 100 different countries. That's a lot of different Netflix libraries, folks. Even Japanese Netflix. But it's not just Netflix. ExpressVPN works with any streaming service. Hulu, BBC, iPlayer, YouTube, and more. ExpressVPN is ridiculously fast. There's never any buffering or lag. You can stream HD and no problem. ExpressVPN is also compatible with all your devices, your phone, your media consoles, your smart TVs, and more. Check it out, expressvpn.com/majority to get an extra 3 months of ExpressVPN for free. Support the show, watch what you want, protect yourself, all in one place, expressvpn.com/majority. All of those links will be in the podcast description and the YouTube description. Quick break. Be right back with Dave Weigel. Sam Cedar on the Majority Report on the phone. It is always a pleasure to welcome from Washington Post, the political correspondent, national political correspondent, Dave Weigel. Dave, welcome back to the program.
It's good to be here in Langley and definitely not Caracas.
Right, exactly. There you go. So, Dave, I know this is very exciting to you because you get to say Macomb County today, and that is like one of those. It's like Waukesha, Macomb, right? And is there any other county in the country that is more of a bellwether than the two?
In a primary, it's a good question because last time, 4 years ago, Hillary Clinton actually won Wayne County, won Macomb, won Oakland. So that's Detroit, and that's the places where most suburbanites, frankly, vote that started with white flight after the 60s. That's where a lot of the vote comes from. It's really about half the vote is going to come from those places, from Washtenaw, which is Ann Arbor, and then from Flint. Half the Democratic vote in the primary comes from there. That's about what it was last time. And so the margin Sanders is playing with.
Oh, hey, let me call you
the suburbs by a bit more.
Hey, Dave, let me call you right back because we're getting a little hinkiness on our phone. I'll call you right back.
Oh, okay. This is a landline, so I'll hang up.
It's probably mine. All right. Sometimes maybe we got to come up with a new.
This is David.
David, it's Sam Cedar. We were just talking. So you're
yes.
So you're saying that
definitely was not interrupted while carrying out an international plot against one of America's foreign enemies. Continue.
So what you were telling us, and this is interesting because this has been a dynamic that's been going on in this campaign we've seen. In 2016, Sanders won a lot of the rural counties, whereas Clinton won a lot of the sort of the more urban or suburban counties, and that's been sort of flipped a little bit for Sanders.
So it has been. If you look at the states that have voted already, and I mean, this is I'm much happier predicting things after Super Tuesday because we've seen how demographics have moved around. Last time Sanders did extremely well in rural areas, very well with white working class voters, and I think, and no one likes to hear this in the Sanders electorate or in his campaign, I think there might have been some overrating of how much of that was support for him and how much of it was just opposition to Hillary, because Oklahoma and Minnesota, two states that they're Midwestern is fair to say about Minnesota, less about Oklahoma. In those places, his vote fell off a lot from last time. And one thing I noticed in the counties that border North Dakota, which has a party-run caucus today, less like the caucus where you sit in a room, more like a typical election. In the counties that border North Dakota, Sanders got about 25% of the vote, and he dominated those counties last time. He dominated North Dakota last time. So you take that to Michigan, a path for him to win this thing is to do better with black voters and about even or only a little bit worse with rural voters, and he's not on track to do that right now. And what I was saying, but when my phone line was absolutely not being interrupted by foreign interference, was that he has been struggling in suburbs. In the suburbs and the college towns in Michigan are going to cast probably half the vote.
Wow. Well, I guess all right. So let's talk about how important, where does Sanders have his best opportunities tonight? We've got 6 states: Idaho, Michigan, Mississippi, Missouri, North Dakota, Washington.
Right.
I mean, presumably it should be Michigan and Washington, right?
Yeah. So Washington is like Minnesota in that it had a big caucus. It was actually the biggest state that had a caucus until the last year, and they switched the state from the caucus to a primary. Washington also votes by mail, and take us a couple steps back here. There might be a real crisis on Democrats' hands if a gigantic state was going to hold a caucus in the middle of the virus outbreak. That is not as much of an issue right now because the states moved to vote by mail. So if you are a reporter looking to talk to people outside the polls in Washington State, I'm sorry about that today. You're not going to find it. They're just dropping ballots in mailboxes. That'll take a while to count. And one thing I've noticed with Sanders chatter online is there's a lot of frustration. Just nothing seems to be going his way in a couple of respects, but he's been doing very well in these states with lots of mail balloting, like California, lots of late voting. It just takes forever to count them. So we'll probably get a sense of who's ahead in Washington tonight, but maybe not who won it, unless it's a blowout for one person or another. And then in Michigan, we will get slow results that will probably be decisive tonight in Michigan. But one thing I heard from folks in both campaigns is Biden did so well in states last week where he did not even spend any effort, any organizing, that if there's a similar just suburban walk to the polls like there was in Virginia or in North Carolina, then Biden could win pretty decisively. I mean, Bernie's the one who is once again in the position of having to make an upset.
I guess let me just go back to, you just said something about California. Yeah. What is happening in California? I mean, I know that Sanders what's happening with his lead there? Do we have a sense of like how the counting is going? I mean, I know what the numbers are specifically, but what is the trend? I mean, does it look like? I mean, right now it looks like he's up about 34%. Biden's 27%.
Yes, and so California is both really irritating and pretty transparent. So the state has a very generous ballot early voting mail ballot process. You can drop a ballot in the mail on Election Day, and quite obviously, let's say you drop your ballot in the mail in Riverside and it's getting counted somewhere in Los Angeles, it's not going to be counted that night. So the state actually releases the totals of ballots remaining, although it's not by party. We know that according to the state, as of this morning, there are 2.9 million ballots uncounted.
Wow.
That and some proportion of those are Republican, but let's say 2/3 of them are Democrat. You're going to have probably another 50% of the vote you just saw already counted added to this total. What has been happening as votes come in is that and it's very situational because, one day there'll be a block of votes from Santa Cruz, one day there'll be some from the Bay Area. But since election night, Sanders has continued to hold a lead. He leads in all but 8 congressional districts by my last count this morning. That's pretty good. He leads in, there's 53 districts in the state, so 45 seats, he's going to get more delegates than anybody else. But the lead is less commanding than some of the exit polling suggested. He's up by 7 statewide over Biden, and Elizabeth Warren has been doing better as ballots are counted late. She looked like she was coming in she looked like she was coming in 4th on election night. She's actually edged ahead of Michael Bloomberg, and that has actually gotten her into the delegate position in a few more districts. So one dream scenario for Sanders, like a good dream scenario, that you heard some speculation about was if the moderates are so divided that they split the vote everywhere, he could win every delegate, Bernie could win every delegate in California. That's just not going to happen. He's going to end up with a majority of delegates pretty comfortably, but not enough likely to wipe out what happened the rest of Super Tuesday. So if you're looking for the California results and hoping for them to maintain a gigantic Sanders lead, was more likely is that the 7-point lead he has could stay the same or shrink a little bit. Still enough for the delegates, but literally the Wisconsin primary will be underway by the time California finishes voting.
Right.
And it's if you're I guess it's more annoying for campaigns than for journalists, but it's not fun for everybody else.
What? All right. So Michigan. I mean, I guess to a certain extent, we just have no sense. I mean, the polling in Michigan does not look good for Sanders. But the polling looked similar, I guess, going into Michigan last time. But it's a different year. It
is, and so one quirky thing about Michigan last time, feels weird to use the word quirky to describe like this democracy failure. But so in 2008, the Democrats got into this fight over the primary calendar, and Michigan and Florida both tried to leapfrog, and frankly, did the sort of thing that a lot of Democrats still want, which is a more diverse state that represents the modern party going first. The party punished them by saying, if you're that early, you're not getting any delegates, and they were sanctioning campaigns that spent time in the states. So in Florida, Democrats got on the ballot but didn't campaign. In Michigan, some Democrats didn't even get on the ballot. The result of all that is that in 2016, the last primary pollsters could look at was one where literally Obama was not running. It was just a Hillary versus uncommitted versus Dennis Kucinich contest. Right. And so pollsters had a bad model. They were more wrong than they'd been in any state, really, in that decade. I mean, it's actually, if you go to the pollsters themselves at Epic MRA or Mitchell, Nate Silver had some analysis at the time. It was just as wild a miss as you can get. And another factor that screwed things up for them was this, at the time, the polling, it's a bit of like a data Ouroboros, because the polling suggested that Hillary was going to win Michigan decisively. So there were let's say tens of thousands of moderate voters who said at that time, I'm a moderate. It looks like Hillary's going to win the Democratic nomination. I don't want Trump to win. I'm going to go vote for Kasich in the Republican primary, because you can do that in Michigan. That was a pretty big factor. I mean, the same thing in New Hampshire. It's a reason Klobuchar did so well, better than polling was suggesting, because a lot of moderate independents came out and said, I heard about her on TV the other day, I would vote for her. And so with all that, the polling is probably less bad this time. And if it's only half as bad as it was last time, then Biden is on track to win. If it's, let's say the error is 10 points, the average of polls, Biden would win by about 10 points. But at the same time, I saw this while I was in the state over the weekend. The Sanders campaign has a gigantic operation. It has been building for months. The Biden campaign is very much playing catch up and basing things on endorsements, on local Democrats, on the governor, on the lieutenant governor. It's just kind of tried to mobilize this shock campaign. And part of that campaign, it's running in Michigan, which maybe you've seen, it literally just plays footage of Super Tuesday states being called for Biden with the implication that, look, this thing's basically over. Let's just end it right now. And criticizing Bernie Sanders for going negative on him as if, and they're trying, there's a little bit of projection here, as if every Democrat is like Joe Biden. They just wants Bernie to go away so they can start running against Trump.
I mean, there's definitely. I think that's what they're banking on some level. What other states are we looking at that maybe Sanders has a chance to keep it close or to sneak one out? Any?
Yeah. So there's 6 states. We talked about Washington and Michigan. There's also Idaho. There's North Dakota. There's Missouri. There's Mississippi. Now, last time North Dakota and Idaho, Sanders won both. He won Idaho by a landslide. Last time he very, very narrowly lost Missouri. And actually the entire Hillary margin for Missouri basically came from how big she won the city of St. Louis. She was doing pretty poorly the rest of the country. And so again, like, it's possible to get too drunk on pessimism for Bernie Sanders, given how things are going. But if the votes were shaking out the same way they did last week, Missouri would be very tough for him to hold on to that 49% he got last time. Mississippi is not good for him. He basically has given up on the state, which is very bittersweet. I mean, Mississippi was a state Sanders has been citing for years as one the party needs to invest in to prove that you can win anywhere, and he's pulling out of it in the primary. And North Dakota and Idaho are, like Washington, states that have changed from traditional caucuses to different processes. And in North Dakota, it's Firehouse Caucus is kind of, I don't know where that term came from, but it's basically, hey, the party is running this election, but you can just show up and drop a ballot off and walk out. It's not like a main caucus. Same, Idaho is a straight-up primary. And so Sanders lost already several states that switched from caucuses to primaries. He lost Maine and Minnesota. These are going to be more competitive. I think on a good night for him, he's going to win Idaho and North Dakota. On a great night, he adds a Michigan to it. The rest are much heavier. On a great night, he adds Washington, maybe Michigan. The rest are, I think, heavier carries.
I see. Okay. And so a great night, Idaho, North Dakota, Michigan, and Washington. A good night, Idaho, North Dakota, Michigan,
and maybe Washington.
So, so like in terms of, let me ask you to sort of predict. It's Wednesday now, and somehow we got the results in, and Michigan is he ekes out Michigan, wins in Idaho, wins in North Dakota. Is there any question that he wouldn't continue on to, at the very least, go to the debate?
No question at all. And one thing you've seen from Sanders' own campaign, much more from his supporters online, is a sense that the rallying around Biden is being done to protect a nominee who's just not that good at campaigning or expressing himself at locking this up before voters notice. I mean, there's a little bit to that. In Iowa, in New Hampshire, places I spent lots of time in,
I would say,
where people saw Biden the most, he lost voters because he had kind of middling, sometimes rambling town hall appearances. He was really blown off the stage by people like Elizabeth Warren, like Kamala Harris, like Cory Booker, even people who didn't make it to the caucuses. So people who saw them at a very exposed length were not that impressed. And so there's a sense by the Sanders world that, look, if it looks like he's just rolling through these primaries because the party leaders want him to, we have a chance to warn people what a general election would be like in a debate. And again, I don't think that's crazy. There have been debates that really rattle confidence in the poll leader, and this would be a debate that is happening days before the second biggest primary date on the calendar so far. It's primaries in in Ohio, Florida, Illinois, and Arizona. And once everything has a downside for Sanders at this point, those are all states that have lots of early voting. So the dream scenario for Sanders is winning so convincingly a debate, and Biden looking so bad that that Sanders will still need to overcome a big locked-in early vote, and that is probably leaning for Biden, certainly in Florida. I mean, Florida is another state that Biden is returning to this week. We're not sure if Sanders is ever going to get back there.
Well, and I mean, look, we saw Michael Bloomberg basically flush $500 million down the toilet in the course of like 45 minutes in the debate, right? I mean, that was basically it. It was gone. And Biden's investment is obviously not in dollars. It's people's investment in the idea that he's the guy who's going to win. He was associated with Obama, et cetera, et cetera. This is going to be the first time that he's going to be sitting, apparently, on a sort of debate stage, right? They're going to try and make it more of like a town hall. I imagine that if there's ever a time for Bernie Sanders to say, like, I don't need your stinking rules, I would imagine it's going to be there. I'm not sure exactly what that would mean. But so let me ask you this. Bernie loses in Michigan. He, maybe, it keeps it close in Washington, keeps it close in Idaho, loses badly in Mississippi, keeps it close in Missouri. I mean, let's just say he wins none of those. He just keeps it close.
Yeah.
There's no blowout. Maybe Michigan's a little bit more of a blowout. He's still going to stay in to this debate, isn't he?
Till the debate, yes. It is very hard to imagine the campaign abandoning things. And look, I mean, even Faz Shakir, the campaign manager, was retweeting this video this morning of Biden getting into it with an NRA guy at a factory. Honestly, as confrontations between Biden and voters go, and this is a weakness for Biden, he has a healthy ego. He gets very irritated when somebody disagrees with him. As those go, this is not one of the worst ones. I mean, he's basically taking a position that most Democrats share, which is, like don't tell me that the Second Amendment means you can own whatever gun you want. But it was very telling, I thought, that Faz retweeted that, and it's sort of a hint that, look, if we think this guy who has struggled and, in order for him to have a good debate in South Carolina, the bar had to be lowered several miles below the surface of the earth. They think they can take him apart in that, and they have a chance to do that. Why wouldn't they? I mean, Sanders is a better performer in these situations, in town halls, than Biden is. And you probably saw over the last couple of days the Sanders people talking about the negotiations for the debate format and really accentuating that Biden would prefer to have this be a town hall format where they're seated. I don't think the seated thing itself is crazy. Although these are both candidates who like to take seated questions by getting up and walking around the stage. So I don't know why that's part of the negotiation. But they're clearly looking at saying, okay, even if things are bad, we're going to get another chance for voters to see these candidates and say, look, who do you actually trust to carry the ball all the way to Milwaukee into the general election? I mean, this is a point they can correctly say that Cory Booker and Julian Castro and other candidates were making about Biden, not even very subtly. I mean, I think the funniest one still is Tim Ryan, the congressman from Ohio, accidentally calling a Bloomberg he accidentally called a Bloomberg reporter thinking he was a donor and just started unloading how Biden was losing it, and then said he didn't mean that, and then endorsed Biden. So
wait a second. Whoa. Is there audio of that?
There's not audio. This is there's a Bloomberg story from a couple months ago, because it was in New Hampshire, that Ryan realized that he had done this. But that is probably the most mask-off version of this, where you had a candidate who was running pretty explicitly on I'm a young, sharp guy and Biden is not, admitting this to somebody and then walking it back, and then not that long afterwards just endorsing Biden.
Right. All right. Well, so with all that said, let's just shift a little bit to the last candidate who dropped out, because in my mind, the one, the debate is a potential event that could take place that could change the trajectory of the race. There was only one other event that could have happened this week, right after Super Tuesday, and that would have been an endorsement from Elizabeth Warren, in my estimation. I don't know, maybe there was something else that could have happened, but short of some act of God. And she has, at least for now, declined to endorse. But I would imagine every day that goes by, regardless, endorse Biden, endorse Sanders, every day that goes by, her leverage and the value of that endorsement seems to me drops, right? I
think so. And look, I think that Sanders is not somebody that Elizabeth Warren has clashed with as much as Biden in the past. And so I made like a little analysis of what she might do here that I think some people read as endorsement of what she would do. It wasn't that at all. But Elizabeth Warren enters negotiations wanting something and then leaves them when she gets it. And it is not clear what she would get from a Sanders endorsement unless she thought Sanders could win. It is clear what she would get from staying neutral, which is basically what she was getting at the end of the 2016 primary, which Hillary Clinton was aware but not aware enough of her problems on the left. And Warren had a voice, not the loudest voice, but a voice in suggesting appointments, not the big ones that you read about like Treasury Secretary, but under that, just lobbying and saying, here's how you should form the government. She was a senator with a vote who could, veto effectively some of those choices. I think that is what she wants. If the choice is between endorsing a Bernie Sanders, the campaign that will lose, and endorsing a Biden campaign or letting a Biden campaign win so that she can lobby for appointments, I think that's the path she'll go down. And so I'm being kind of blasé here about the chances of Sanders winning, but there is some bitterness, and there is the sense by the Warren people that Sanders was never going to win this nomination anyway. Their view of her running was that he was going to end up faithfully in the position he is now, which is even in a one-on-one contest with Joe Biden, he's made too many enemies among Democratic leaders and Democratic voters to get to 50%. So they don't think her vote is worth as much as even Sanders people think it is. And that is I mean, there are people who get in guns a-blazing even when a candidate looks like they might lose because they believe in the cause. And I don't think that describes her. I think she believes more in what you do when you get power. And for her right now, unless Sanders has a very good night, that power might not ever get to Sanders.
Now that seems a rational explanation to me. But let me ask you this, your sense of this, because to me it's a bit of a mystery because what does she think that she's going to be able to deliver to Joe Biden? Because look, right? Here's the thing: a lot of Warren supporters, maybe the ones that were remaining were Joe Biden's people anyways, right? Maybe the ones that, it seems to me, I don't know what percentage of, let's say Bernie Sanders is, stuck at 30%, right, of the party.
Yeah.
It seems to me that 75% of those, maybe 65% of those are Warren is their second choice. And that my sense is that a lot of those people are just going, wait, what? We thought you were we were in this progressive front. Sanders might have been my first choice, but you were my close second choice. What does Elizabeth Warren think that she's going to be able to deliver? If I'm Joe Biden, I'm saying you and what army?
But deliver, that's a good question. I think that is how she's looking at it. He's not in a look at, and Sanders might have the same problem. If Sanders does very badly over the next couple of weeks and he tries to negotiate with Biden, Biden can tell him to pound sand because he will be on track to win a clear majority of delegates on the first ballot convention.
Well, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about.
I know what you mean. Yeah. I'm just saying it's no one is sitting in one of these states with a pile of delegates or a key endorsement that can shift things and saying you can't win without me. I'm not sure either. If she's in the position, I don't think anyone's in that position. I think it turned out James Clyburn was and nobody else. So the point of all that is I think that it is less that she will be owed things, is that she will reestablish a relationship with Biden, which was not that warm in the Obama years. She preferred to work with Biden, with the president, than with Joe Biden, but portray herself as somebody who knows everything about the intricacies of finance, and basically, right. Biden does not run around defending the bankruptcy bill. The general Biden pattern is to take credit for everything that went right, and awkwardly not apologize for things that went wrong. But I think it is to go in there and say, I'm an important voice who is not working against you, and you should give me you should listen to me, at least heed me on these lists of nominees I'm going to suggest for lower roles in the administration. And again, that seems very wonky and boring, and that is like where she's comfortable. I mean,
No.
I think she that. And so we don't know what Biden's headspace is going to be like. I mean, if he's going to, we really don't. I mean, I think there's already some worry that he might look at who endorsed him and say, I get along with Amy Klobuchar and support her and as a vice presidential nominee, even though she'd bring nobody from the left back to the table, right? So we don't know how he's thinking. I'm trying to puzzle out how she's thinking.
No, but that's my point. Is that if that's how she's thinking, why wouldn't she endorse Biden?
Yeah.
Like if you thought
why wouldn't she endorse right now? Because I think she has less credibility with the left as she jumps in. I mean, now the thing about her too, she noticed, I think, over 4 years that staying neutral in 2016, which actually she was one of the few people in the Massachusetts delegation who stayed neutral in the Hillary-Bernie race. Staying neutral got her a little bit with Hillary. It got her nothing with Sanders. So the Hillary campaign was indeed talking to her. She got meetings with her. She was submitting ideas for who Hillary could appoint, whereas Sanders lost, so he couldn't offer anything there. And Sanders supporters, even in her state, were angry for years, saying it was such a close race. You could have delivered Massachusetts to Bernie. I'm not one of those people who says, "Oh, if people are mean to you online, it's their fault if the candidate doesn't act." Like, campaigns are mean.
Right.
Candidates should have the ability to stand up to this stuff, and people have been absolutely brutal, making fun of everything from Joe Biden's son's employment history to whether he can finish a sentence. And he is not. One thing that I think encourages Democrats about him is he's not seemed like a score settling type of guy. He does not seem like Donald Trump. But her recent experience is that the establishment candidate, if they fall over the finish line, listen to her. And the left-wing candidate, even if he wins, which Sanders is not in the position of doing, doesn't give her that much. I mean, she was at the very end of this campaign. I think much less than the podcasters being mean to her. Much less than that, the decision by Sanders to kind of go for a knockout in Massachusetts and have some campaign events, which didn't even work because Joe Biden won the state.
Right.
I think that strategically made sense for him. I mean, he was going to do better if she knocked out of the race, but it was pretty typical of the way they view things differently. I mean, she is let's build the biggest group of alliances possible and negotiate the heck out of something, and he is let's overwhelm them with our numbers. And if you're looking at it right now, the let's build a coalition, even if we're not that great at campaigning side, the Biden side, is doing better than Bernie Sanders' let's overwhelm them with new voters side.
I mean, I agree. I'm just thinking in terms of like leverage. Let's stand to the race. Bernie Sanders has lost. He has conceded. Both Warren and Sanders shows up. And if I'm Joe Biden, I'm looking at Bernie Sanders' ability to raise money, his ability to mobilize people. And if I'm Joe Biden, I'm looking at Elizabeth Warren and saying, like, all your people that you had, they either voted for me anyways, for the most part, or you have now alienated them because they realize that you're not really part of what they were trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess like that's
I know
the only.
What you mean.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I understand like her sense of like, and if it's the other thing, it's like if she already knows that she's trying to keep her powder dry because she wants to go to Joe Biden and say like, let me appoint, some of your Treasury people, like, why not then endorse Biden? Like, what does she think she's going to lose? But that
you might be poking all the right holes in this theory. I mean, I'm describing how Warren has done this in the past, but there's nothing that would prevent Biden from winning and saying, all right, I'm going to appoint I'm going to go walk around downtown Wilmington, and the first 20 bankers that come out of these buildings, I'm going to put them in my Treasury Department. Nothing's stopping that. I just think Biden, if he wins this nomination, is unlike most people who will have won it because he ran a campaign that was losing everywhere and was resuscitated because Democratic voters wanted somebody who was electable. But it's a kind of weird, shaky, ad hoc coalition. So I think if she can negotiate her way into that, but she might get nothing. That's true. But she might get nothing by endorsing Sanders. And I don't think the grudge is that much bigger where she'd endorse Sanders and Sanders loses. But I'm not sure if people notice what was done at the last minute for these people. I think she'd have less bargaining power though if she, let's say, I mentioned the primaries next week. Let's say she flew to Ohio the day before that primary, endorsed Biden, and he won that primary by 20 points, I don't think that'd be as helpful because she'd have even more alienated people. And right now, the people who are most furious with Warren for not endorsing Sanders, they're mostly isolated on Twitter, and that is a universe that the Biden people could either ignore or make fun of,
right.
Maybe to their long-term detriment. I mean, I have noticed them getting a lot more kind of cocky and punchy in the last few days.
I guess my experience has been just like a lot of people who are not like, Politico-y type of people who are supportive of Sanders, but also supportive of Warren. I've just had it and maybe it's obviously this is anecdotal, but I've just had a lot of people who've just been like, I don't understand what's going on. Why isn't she endorsing? As if it was just sort of obvious that she would, just like it would have been obvious that Sanders would have endorsed her. And I try to explain, I think she's mad about Massachusetts. And people are like, what? For you and I, we've been doing this long enough where we realize sometimes people get their feelings hurt and decide to change the course of American history. But I don't think normal people actually sort of perceive that. They're like, what? No, there has to be something else going on here. And I can see that maybe she thinks that she wants this leverage with Biden, but I don't know why she wouldn't then endorse Biden now and get this whole thing over with, because I don't think that she's going to have any more, the leverage that she supposedly gets from the left. I think there's going to be less of that than there is, than there would have been, frankly. But
I don't know. I mean, I think I'm not sure if we'll discuss it now. I think again, the only model she has is last time, where she did have leverage with Hillary Clinton, but it was the leverage of somebody who had never run for president in the first place, and who everyone on the left liked. And there are people there, but the left is so hard to define, as Warren's campaign found. I mean, she had basically kind of at her height when she was doing the absolute best, she still had the biggest support from this sort of bourgeois left coalition, with more education, whiter than the Democratic base, et cetera, whiter than the Sanders base. I mean, he always was, even when he was losing badly, was lapping her with Latino voters. And in terms of the kind of intelligentsia, I mean, she never was the candidate of Jacobin. She was the candidate of the Nation and Mother Jones and stuff like that. And that is frankly the left that the Democratic establishment understands. I mean, they really do, and I think in a risky way, minimize the younger, more left-wing wing of the party. They just don't understand the DSA wing. They don't know what to make, and they think that they can maybe try to co-opt them down the line, but they don't think they're electorally important, where they do think that the factions Warren is most popular with are important. It's weird. I don't know how they're going to figure it out. I'm just telling you why I was not surprised that Warren stayed neutral.
All right. So last question. And we saw this week Booker and Harris. Harris is being featured, it seems like to me, in Michigan quite a bit. And, one wonders if that's, sort of an audition. I imagine she's perceiving it that way. What have you started to hear anything about how people are assessing how coronavirus, the COVID-19, may impact the general?
Oh, that's a good question. And it's already affecting how the campaigns work. I mean, I report from the road a lot, and I was going to be in Florida by tomorrow morning, and I'm not now because there's going to be, I think, one Biden rally Thursday, but there has been downsizing of other candidate activity. There was going to be a AFL-CIO forum in Orlando I was going to finish up at Thursday night. There's not going to be one now. I think the biggest tell, frankly, about how this is affecting the campaign is that the Trump campaign had set out on this mission of holding big rallies in states that were holding Democratic primaries, and they're not doing that anymore. They're not saying we're not doing that because we're scared of the virus, but the reality speaks for itself. I mean, they went from, and it is, if there was no virus, it is very, very easy to see how they would have rented some space in Detroit. The president would have spent 2 hours making fun of Joe Biden's crowds, and et cetera, et cetera. He didn't do it. I mean, they haven't planned anything for next week in Ohio or Florida yet. So it's already affecting and this is a way, ironically, that's probably helps Biden, because Biden is not a candidate who's going to get big turnout at rallies. He's simply not. It's part of the spin. I mean, I was talking to Klobuchar when I was in Michigan, and she was just bragging about how, well, Biden's voters don't go to rallies. They're Democrats who know what they believe in, and they come out and vote for him election day, et cetera. Like, he doesn't need big rallies and doesn't count on big rallies, even for voter registration. And Sanders does, and Trump does. So it is to the extent it stops people from going to these rallies. I mean, it screws up how a campaign organizes them. I mean, just anecdotally, things that are not campaign events, I've seen people organize things and then struggle to get a crowd at them. I mean, if you were a campaign advance team, it takes thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars to put on a real event. The malt boxes, invite the media, the staging, the mics, et cetera, rent the space. Like, do you want to rent a space for 5,000 people and only 1,000 show up because they're scared?
Right.
So it is having cascading effects that we have only begun to understand, and I mean, it's something honestly I need to dig a bit more into. But look, it's the same reason the campaigns are not like, here's how we avoid assassins on the trail. They're not saying, here is how we're dealing with this virus that is scaring everybody. They're kind of shy about talking about it, but if it unfolds as it's unfolding, I think it is mostly harmful for Trump and Sanders.
I couldn't agree more. I'm willing to bet right now that you're going to get at least a couple of Biden people who are going to tell you off the record, this is the best thing that could have happened to Joe Biden, because now we have
I think so.
Well, now we have an excuse not to have rallies. Now we have an excuse not to have big audiences for a debate. We were hoping that we could get Joe Biden to do 2 events a week. Now we only have to do 1, and he's doing it because he cares about the people, as opposed to he's just, needs a nap or whatever it is. I mean, I think that's, and I'm being a little bit flip here. And of course, there's going to be, if what appears to be, sort of in our future happens, it's going to be a horrible tragedy. But I think from the perspective of just sort of this analysis, I think this is, never mind what it's going to do to the economy and the implications of that relative to the election, but just from a practical standpoint, this is basically like a rolling snow day for Joe Biden on some level. Like, we're not going to have to do this stuff, and this is and frankly, it hurts Donald Trump because you put this guy in front of a podium, and it's just snooze fest.
No, absolutely, and I think it might is going to help him in the short run. In terms of how people actually vote is what I think everyone is more worried about, beyond who the candidate is, because there is a lot of early voting in the next couple states. There is not much early voting, none really, in Pennsylvania, in states that vote later in the calendar. And you saw even in California, places that have a ton of early voting, people were still showing up on Election Day in lines for hours. Right. You only need to think of a few loud open mouth coughs in line for a scene from Contagion to begin to risk itself, right? For people to just get not just sick of standing in line for 2 hours, but to wonder if it's worth it. I don't think that there is much. Now, given the self-selected population of people who do vote, who do wait until Election Day to vote, I think it's still a much smaller problem than just, economic system in which poor people work during Election Day and can't go out and cast a ballot. That's probably a bigger problem, but it is going to have some splashback effects.
Dave Weigel, thank you so much. Appreciate your time today. Tell the entire directorate and secret division you work in, thank you for giving us access to you. And of course, we'll let you go back into deep cover.
Yeah, and it's I am angry with the company for giving me sinuses and allergies right now. I would have thought they would have cured that by this point. I don't know what my tax dollars are paying for, but I'm muddling through here, so thanks for having me on.
I'm sure that's just a cover. Probably incredibly healthy right now, but he's got to play it up like as part of his travel. Dave Weigel, thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right, bye.
Well, there it is, ladies and gentlemen. Look, obviously want Sanders to do as well as possible tonight. But the debate is going to have an incredible amount of the implications of this debate are going to be really, really big. Because, one of the concerns that people have, and it does feel to me like we have the ideological differences have all shook out, at least in the context of the Democratic primary. I think there's probably still some votes that you can reach by saying like, Joe Biden, NAFTA, but I feel like to a certain extent, there is a momentum to like, if we can resolve this, let's resolve this. And if everybody's telling us that Joe Biden is the guy to win, then he's the guy to win. The only thing that could slow that roll is for the first head-to-head debate and everybody watch and Joe Biden shows up and he can't do it. Not literally can't do it, but people, who knows? Certainly, Mike Bloomberg, there is, I think, very little controversy over the fact that had Mike Bloomberg not been essentially filleted on that debate stage, this would be a very different race right now. I think, I'm not saying he would have won, but I think that like he could still be in. Biden would not have this commanding lead. He would not have gotten those endorsements. That debate really changed things. This next debate Sunday could very well have the same impact. It will certainly, the stakes will be even higher. I'll tell you what's going to happen right now. Sanders does not win any of these states that we went through. Or he wins, let's say, I don't know, Idaho.
North Dakota. Come on, guys.
There's going to be this sense that you're going to hear, this is all but over. Why is Sanders staying into this? Why even have this debate? People are sick of the debates. That's what you're going to hear.
You're hurting the nominee.
Yeah, you're hurting the nominee. This is like 2016. When's Comey going to come out with a letter, et cetera, et cetera. There's going to be 5 days of that. If Sanders takes Michigan, or he takes Washington and he comes close in Michigan and he takes one or two of those other states, if it's a split, then that debate there's going to be a lot of tension on that debate. There's really not going to be a rationale to say, right now, Sanders is, what is he down now? Like in terms of delegates?
Like 100?
Okay, so it's 16.8 to 14.5 or 4.
That's so close.
There's still 60% of the delegates out there right now. And after tomorrow night, there will still be 50% of the delegates out there. And if it's near tie, so we'll see.
Yeah, let's let the rest of the country vote.
Yeah. I think that if I think the question is though is if he's in contention, get to that debate, and we'll take it from there. But ladies and gentlemen, I'll tell you where we're going to take it here. We're going to take it into the fun half, and then later we're going to take it all the way to
the White House.
The primary tonight. So. I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that. Folks, you can support this program by becoming a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you are supporting the free show, and you get it free of commercials. And then we give you extra content. And then we give you all sorts of like little tiny bonuses once every 6 months or something. I don't know. I'm trying to be honest. Maybe once every 3 months, I would say. We're going to ramp it up. But
they've been getting some things there lately.
Oh, definitely. It's just that, things are so crazy right now that we're just like, we're reacting. Believe me, I'm bouncing around. I'm not sleeping, any of that stuff. I'm just trying not to keep eating as a way of staying awake. That's the hardest part. That's why I had to give you all those cookies, because I'll just, energy. So jointhemajorityreport.com is where you go, ladies and gentlemen, to become a member. And also sign up for the AM Quickie. People are loving it. amquickie.com. 6 minutes in the morning, you will know everything that you should know about late last night or about today going forward. I mean, you will be in the know, and it's so convenient. It really should be called the AM Convenient, but that, not so good of a title. I don't know, AM Convenient, if you want to call it that.
I don't think
with
so.
A Q.
Convenient.
I don't know.
I think there's too much ideation going on for
Yeah.
this pitch.
Too much. Exactly. Also, don't forget justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. Joining me tonight for our coverage, in addition to Bobby Big Wheel, Aaron Kleinman, right? I can never get his handle right. But Noma Key Const will be joining us in studio. And you can check out the Noma Key Show at patreon.com, the Noma Key Show, or youtube.com, the Noma Key Show. Noma Key Const will be with us. Check that out. Also, tomorrow night will be TMBS night, because tonight is not TMBS night because it's another frickin' primary night, if you can believe it. So check that out. Patreon.com/TMBS or YouTube.com, The Michael Brooks Show. On that show will be somebody we don't know.
Have some guests.
Some guests. I'm sure there'll be interesting, intriguing guests. But speaking of which, what's happening on the Antifada, Jamie?
I'm so glad you asked. So this week on the Antifada, we speak with some striking grad student instructors from UC Santa Cruz about the wave of wildcat strikes currently spreading across the UC system. We talk about what they're striking over, the cost of living adjustment, how it links up to the wave of labor struggles happening in this country, and why they had to go against the bureaucracy of their own union. I think it was a pretty good conversation. That's out tomorrow. Patreon.com/the Antifada. Also, all three of us appeared recently on a podcast called The Insurgents and had a good conversation analyzing some of the primary results and how the Bernie Sanders movement fits into the larger fight for socialism. So check that out too, folks. We tweeted it, so you can find it that way.
Matt.
Yeah, coming up next on Literary Hangover is The Widow Ranter. It's a play by Afra Ben from 1689. It's about Nathaniel Bacon's rebellion in Virginia. But we're going to use it. It's not very historically accurate, so we're going to mainly talk about colonial Virginia and how they basically instituted and helped reify gender and race in the 1700s. Like, for instance, a lot of the free speech issues, like a lot of the early libel laws, were basically to tell women to shut up and stop slandering men. And also, we'll just stop that. I'll plug the rest of it next time. So Literary Hangover, patreon.com/Literary Hangover.
Folks, see you in a fun half. Left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
You know, I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous, you're a little bit upset, you're riled up.
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude. You want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
That's some good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457-238-56-27. 1/2. 5 eighths. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy.
Dance, dance, dance.
Ooh.
Rand Paul. I had my my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're nothing.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Good. Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey, Sam. Hey, Andy. You guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
That guy might be a Nazi.
Agreed.
No.
Death to America.
You.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way! Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook. Throw our hands up. Ooh. Wow.
But Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me,
Hey, shut up!
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.
all right. Let's just. I really wanted to. I really wanted to just sort of suspend this stuff until. We should hold that until Grim is on. Or let's do it now, and then we'll just reference it. Screw it. Son of a bitch. You know, I really, like, I come in, and I don't, you know, there are some times where I plan stuff. I'm constantly thinking about stuff that ends up on the show. It's just like, I don't know when it's going to come out of me at any point, or if I'm going to feel it, like, and that happens literally up until like 4 seconds before Matt just does the thing. And sometimes it actually happens in the beginning of the song as, like, you know, it's Sam's, you know, Cedar. And I'm hearing that, and I'm not even sure with what I'm going to start with. And maybe that's why, you know, the show is not as good as it could be. But with that said,
it's like jazz.
It's like jazz, but played by somebody who maybe is not so great at playing an instrument. It's sort of like John Benjamin's jazz album in a way.
Aw, you guys are kindred spirits.
Yeah, he's actually maybe I'm not talking out of turn, but he's coming out with a follow up.
Oh, I can't wait.
Yeah, and this time they went big.
Like lessons and stuff?
No, not. Well, look, they went big. Let me just put it this way. It's interesting. There is definitely an evolution, but I'm not going to get caught up on it. And so I didn't want to get too deep into this. I wanted to talk to Ryan Grimm about it. I see that David Dayen has just written a piece too, which, you know, echoes what I've been saying, I think, throughout this campaign, which is that I think she was ill-served by her consultants and advisors. I think the value proposition that she had was diminished, that there was a sense that she would be the compromise candidate, which I think was accurate. And they turned her into the compromised candidate in many respects. And I think that it's a shame. And I think that she's still getting bad advice. And I think maybe there is just some instincts there, or just a sensibility about where power comes from. I think that, you know, she, as a professor and as a lawyer, you go in there and your power comes from your knowledge of the law and your ability to reason and think and make a good argument. And that is the sine qua non, if you will, of those type of arguments. And within the context of working within government and its bureaucracies and the power plays that are very individual, like political wars in academia, and within like political systems that are very much about literally numbers of people that you can count on your hand. That these people are aligned with those people. I mean, the politics that you deal with in academia, and I can tell you, I know about the politics that were taking place at Harvard Law School in the 90s, because we got some of the throw-offs from that at BU when I was there. And I knew a lot of Harvard alum, frankly, because of the legal circles. I'm in Massachusetts. And that was a very treacherous place to be, at Harvard Law School in that respect. And those skills, I think we should not underestimate those skills. Hugely important when you get into the halls of power. But when you are talking about politics where you're showing up and you're talking about sort of coalition politics, arguments and those type of things become less relevant. There's a question of you and what army are you bringing? And that's why, to me, it is a mystery to me what Elizabeth Warren is doing. Because if she wants to have leverage with Joe Biden, it's not going to be because she makes the best arguments, because she has used those arguments on Joe Biden. The conclusion of her arguments is that Joe Biden, for much of his career, has been doing things that are not helpful to people. And so she can't rely on those, because Joe Biden is also a human being who's just going to be like, if I think that what you're saying is rational, then I've been doing bad things. When she comes to Joe Biden and says, give me choices on picks, et cetera, Joe Biden's going to be like, you and what army? What am I going to get out of this? Why am I going to let you make a pick as opposed to Pete? Or as opposed to Kamala? You don't even have a super PAC. What do I got to do this with you? Why? What cover are you going to give me? Because she's got a tough argument to make. If Bernie Sanders loses and is out of the race, I don't think it's fair to blame Elizabeth Warren, but I think what is fair is to assess she did not feel like fighting for these causes was a hill that she wanted to die on. Now, in my personal estimation, that would have been the hill, but she wouldn't have died on it. Look, there's no guarantee the Democratic nominee is going to win in 2020. 4 years from now, she would still be younger than Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden. Bernie Sanders is, without a doubt, it's going to be tough for him to run not as an incumbent 4 years from now. And certainly, if he doesn't win this time around, it's going to be very hard to imagine that he's going to run again in 2024. That's very hard to imagine. Elizabeth Warren less so, but these people are all wondering where she is. Not, are you with Bernie? I don't think people are asking. They're like, aren't you with us? That's the thing, is that they keep looking at this. It appears like it's about her and Bernie. Like it's, people are saying, you owe Bernie. I think what people are saying, of course, narrowly tailored on Twitter, people phrase it this way. I think what people are saying is wait, I don't know if "owe" is the right word, but aren't you with us?
No, I mean, she does owe people as a politician with a constituency.
However you want to phrase it. I just don't want to get hung up on what that dynamic is.
I think there's a bit of projection with the owing discourse, going back to what Weigel said, in that, I think in October or whenever she was leading the polls, I think they thought, it's not your time, Bernie. You can actually do this. We're the only progressive campaign that can actually do this. And I think the bitterness comes from, then AOC endorses Bernie. And all of a sudden, I think they felt entitled to it in a way that is creating bitterness now toward Bernie Sanders.
I know. Here's a report. Now, let me just say this. Okay, this is on Rising. Grimm was on it with Sager. This is a Fox News journalist. Is he Fox News or local Fox?
New Hampshire Fox.
Okay, so local Fox is it's slightly different, beast there. But still, I am extremely skeptical of this. But I'm on Twitter talking to I don't know if they're surrogates of hers or there's certainly people who are in her camp, and I'm asking for someone explain this to me, because I still, frankly. And it's maybe because, people say I'm naive or whatever it is, but I still find it hard to believe that this is about, that her lack of endorsement is about some anger towards Bernie. And, Weigel says that it's a way for her to maintain some leverage with Biden. I guess, but that doesn't seem logical to me. Like
how many votes could she really deliver to Biden?
Well, go endorse Biden. If you have value, go close it out for him now. And at the end of this, what makes you think that you're going to have support from anybody except for your 10%? Because your 30% support, 40% support in this party is contingent upon all those people who are supporting Bernie, but perceive you as with them, and you're their number two. But here's what this guy says. I find it hard to believe, but Weigel sort of implied it too.
Have you spoken with folks in and around the campaign who can kind of lay out the rationale for why not to endorse Bernie Sanders?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've talked to a few people, and of course they're talking, they're asking to be anonymous to speak more freely. And they say this. She's not happy with Bernie Sanders. Why? He kind of stuck it to her, didn't he? Where did he go just before Super Tuesday? He went to Massachusetts, her home state. He campaigned in Boston. He campaigned in Springfield. He kind of almost seemed like he was poking at her. And his allies, some of his top surrogates, think the squad especially was saying some really difficult and tough things about Elizabeth Warren, saying it was basically time for her to get the heck out of the race. That really hurt her, I think, from at least what her campaign aides were telling me. And I think that was also a reason why she's in no rush to endorse a guy who used to be considered one of her closest friends in the.
That to me, I have a very hard time believing that. I mean, because Weigel offered that maybe, she's trying to maintain some leverage, and this is what she did in 2016, and it got her some leverage with Clinton's campaign, I guess. But the idea that it would come down to she was just mad about Bernie trying to win the campaign.
That makes her look incredibly petty.
I find it very hard to believe.
Well, do you think she's, like you said, she's still being taken for a ride by the people that she hired to work for her?
Yeah, they're gone.
And I want to retain some amount of respect for her. So I've devised a charitable explanation in my mind, not because I love her and I think she's my friend, but because she's still one of the better elected Democrats and we don't have that many progressives to choose from.
Exactly.
So I'm thinking she's still being very naive about outward-facing politics and about what would best benefit her in her career. And the people who are working for her, who used to work for Hillary Clinton, have no stake in her long-term viability as a politician, and in fact, probably have a stake in suppressing her.
I mean, where I'm at with Warren is I'm not super interested in what the rationales are. It's like you were talking about with the computer. When the outputs start looking good again, then I'll start, looking to Elizabeth Warren
it's a real
positively.
Shame. I'm bummed.
We're all bummed.
But again, the big hope is that Bernie pulls something off in the primary tonight. Just keeps it close. I mean, it would be great. I will take a win, but I think, Weigel's point about 2008, I had forgotten about that. Michigan and Florida went rogue there, and on some level, Clinton at that time, and people forget this, and I was just reminded about this, Clinton tried to get those to count, those delegates in Florida and Michigan to count, even though Obama had not run there because he was following the rules of the DNC. And she tried to get it to count. It would be helpful to go back and revisit these things. The DNC always does stuff, there's always some type of, in the RNC too, on some level, like they canceled half the primaries this year. They canceled, like literally just said, we're not doing it there. And they kept Weld off the ballot in half the places. Like,
remember that when Trump makes opportunistic claims about the DNC?
Yes. I mean, please, everyone, like, do not delude yourselves. The DNC to the RNC is no different than, the Democrats to the Republicans, which is that, it gets worse. It gets worse than it is now. That doesn't mean it's right. It just means that it gets worse. And, but I had forgotten that. And they tried to claim that they should count the Michigan and Florida delegates. And people are like, what? You didn't even run there. So, all right, let's dig into some of this stuff here. It's getting hot in here because it's 60 degrees out. Meanwhile, I don't know what Joe Biden's going to do about global warming.
Not a lot.
I mean, he said in last March that
not enough.
His proposal is as progressive as anybody else's.
Calling into the majority report.
He got an
Please
F
use
from
no
the Sunrise
speakerphone and
movement.
have your one comment
The Bernie
or
Bros?
question ready.
Yeah.
Was it
Sam
F
to
for
call out
fun?
your area code. Sam will
I
be
don't
with
think
you
so.
shortly.
I'm trying to come up with another F word that doesn't, I don't have it in me to come up with another F.
F for fantastic climate.
Yeah, exactly. Here is Joe Biden. This is pretty stunning. We have seen the polls, Democratic primary voters coming out in, I don't know if it's every state. I think it's like 14 out of 16. I don't know. The vast majority. The vast majority of Democratic voters say, the vast majority of the states, and anywhere from 50 to I think as high as 65%, the Democrats polled in these states and the exit polls said that they want to get rid of private health insurance and have a single-payer government-run insurance plan. The big argument has been, you're never going to get that through a Senate or a House. This is not possible. And I want you to contemplate this. Let's say it did. How hard would it be to get it through a Senate and a House? It would be incredibly hard. How many studies would we see about cost? So just imagine it gets through a Democratic-controlled House and Senate. I don't think you could have Republican control. Just imagine it gets there. We did it, right? Because we have a Democratic president sitting in the White House. Think again if it's Joe Biden.
Other candidates, this kind of question, veto question. Let's flash forward. Your president, Bernie Sanders, is still active in the Senate. He manages to get Medicare for all through the Senate in some compromised version, the Elizabeth Warren version or other version. Nancy Pelosi gets a version of it through the House of Representatives. It comes to your desk. Do you veto it?
I would veto anything that delays providing the security and the certainty of health care being available now. If they got that through and by some miracle, and there was an epiphany that occurred, and some miracle occurred that said, okay, it's passed, then you got to look at the cost. I want to know, how did they find the $35 trillion? What is that doing? Is it going to significantly raise taxes on the middle class, which it will? What's going to happen? Look, my opposition isn't to the principle that you should have Medicare. I mean, everybody, healthcare should be a right in America. My opposition relates to whether or not, A, it's doable, two, what the cost is, and what the consequences for the rest of the budget are. How are you going to find $35 trillion over the next 10 years without having profound impacts on everything from taxes for middle class and working class people, as well as the impact on the rest of the budget?
Okay, first off, if you think something should be a right and it has passed through both houses of our government, you're still going to try and find things wrong with it? First of all, I'll tell you where you find $35 trillion. Start with...
Over 10 years.
Over 10 years. You start with the $17 trillion over 10 years we're going to pay as a government anyways to ensure people on Medicaid and Medicare. You start there because you're not going to have to spend that because you have a new program. And then you go out and you find the $19 to $20 trillion that is going to be spent on that same health insurance and health care in the private sector. And you say, we're going to do it more efficiently and save people money. $300, $500 billion a year over the course of those 10. That's where you can find it. And if think about this insanity. Why would you say this? A Democratic Congress and a Democratic House have passed what scenario? I'm trying to just think historically if we've even had a situation like that.
It's a real mascot moment.
Yeah, Andrew Johnson. It's like, who are you signaling to?
Health insurance companies, the stock market.
Jamie Dimon.
I mean, it's nuts. It's nuts.
Well, their stocks, they're doing better since Biden started doing better in the primaries, but they could be doing even better.
I wonder if they're going to have to back off that thing. Like, what else is he willing to veto? I mean, now the question should be, what else are you willing to veto?
Like Green New Deal?
Green New Deal if it's passed? What about free higher education? One option in each state. What about universal pre-K? What about expansion of Social Security? Would you cut that?
It's really going to boost the electorate.
Yeah. Like, how many things does he have to promise to veto before he ceases to be any different from Trump?
I think there needs to be questions. I think there needs to be question of him on all of these things. I mean, can we get Mitt Romney back? Because I'm sure he would veto these things too. Man, that's nuts.
I feel like
just cranky.
I mean, my hope is people have gotten Bernie's point about this because he said it so many times that middle class people will have a net savings.
Yes. Like, it doesn't matter if taxes go up if your healthcare costs go way, way down. This is a little bit of a taste. Joe Biden was at a rally in Michigan. And I should say it's a taste insofar as I don't think we're going to see too many of these rallies, frankly. It's the NAFTA one. Oh, sorry. And Joe Biden at a rally in Michigan, and this is going to be a problem. This is going to be a problem because Donald Trump is going to run to the left of Joe Biden on trade. Now, is it justified? The answer is no. Donald Trump has no, position in this way. He's had to bail out. His stupid trade wars have hurt people, bailed out farmers. But the USMCA, Amy Klobuchar voted for it. It's an upgrade on NAFTA because NAFTA was garbage. Is it a significant upgrade? No. But Donald Trump is going to say, my plan's better than your plan, Joe. You supported NAFTA. Here's a protester. Here's some protesters in Michigan. NAFTA killed our jobs. And he's saying it's not a Trump rally. Now, is he saying, don't attack him? Or is he saying that we shouldn't have protesters? Saying don't attack him.
Yeah, at one point, I don't think it's in either one of these, but he calls them Bernie bros, too.
Why did you vote for NAFTA? Why did you say black people can't read?
There you go. I mean, this is a problem. I mean, obviously the protesters aren't, that's the protester, but this is going to be a problem with Donald Trump. And they're going to target Michigan voters, and they're going to talk about Joe Biden's support for NAFTA. And he was incredibly supportive of NAFTA. Here is our good friend Matt Binder, the podcast Doomed, writer for Mashable, producer emeritus at the Majority Report, put together a little, this is almost like, sort of like Coppola in The Godfather, where they cut back and forth, right? Between the baptism and the taking out of all the other, cleaning up all the business. Here, Matt Binder cuts back and forth between Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden back in 1993. I remember the days when we were debating NAFTA.
Mr. Speaker, corporate America and the big money interests have told us that NAFTA is a good deal. I don't believe them.
I quite frankly think that both the arguments for and against NAFTA are vastly overblown.
NAFTA may be a good deal for the people who own our corporations, but it is a bad deal for American workers, for our family farmers, and it is bad for the environment.
I see it in the end that 3, 5, 7, 10 years from now, we're going to look down at this issue, and in terms of the context in which it's being debated about creating jobs or losing jobs, this is essentially going to be a wash.
This NAFTA agreement should be defeated.
Those of us who support NAFTA, and I am announcing my support for NAFTA.
The American worker and family farmer should not be asked to compete against the desperate people of Mexico who are forced to work for a minimum wage of 58 cents an hour and an average manufacturing wage of $2.35 an hour.
I'm supporting NAFTA because I think it is a positive thing to do, but not because I think it's going to cure the workers' fears who have legitimate reason to be concerned.
A Wall Street Journal poll of last year has already told us, that 40% of the CEOs who were polled said that they are prepared to move manufacturing down to Mexico, 40% if NAFTA were approved, and 24% that said that they would use NAFTA to lower wages.
It will not exacerbate their concerns. It will not exacerbate their circumstance.
I regard it as an outrage that American taxpayers, some of whom have already been thrown out on the streets by American corporations going to Mexico, are now going to be asked to pay higher taxes to clean up the toxic waste caused by American companies that have gone to Mexico. Let the companies clean up their waste, not the American taxpayers.
These people have fear whether they'll be able to pay their mortgage. NAFTA will not fix it. NAFTA will not hurt it.
Mr. Speaker, let us defeat this NAFTA.
Let's see. Joe said specifically 2, 5, 10 years from now. This was in 1993. We're not going to see any difference in terms of jobs. Now, according to the EPI, back in 2003, this was written in 2003, 10 years after the fateful words, NAFTA-related job losses have piled up since 1993. There were almost 900,000 jobs lost. This is according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. 900,000 jobs lost as a function of NAFTA. There are others who suggest that it was even more. That it was 3 times that. But the Bureau of Labor Statistics say it was almost a million jobs. Now, that's just like the obvious impact to our job market. I don't think that probably keeps in mind like what it did to Mexicans who were driven from Mexican campesinos who were driven from their farms into the cities to get low-wage jobs there because corn that was brought in from the United States cost half the price that corn grown in Mexico cost.
Half the nutrition too.
And probably a lot less nutritious because of the way that we produce it.
It was bad for workers all over the place.
We never got the environmental or labor protections that were promised as part of that. So Joe was right on one side of it, wrong on the other. In other words, it wasn't going to have the good impact that he said it did. He just was wrong on the bad impact. You know, for a guy who keeps talking about judgment, maybe there was a bigger bill to vote on about trade over the past 25 years, but I don't know what it was. There certainly wasn't a bigger thing to vote on than the Iraq war authorization within 50 years. I mean, I don't know. There may be other things when we talk about judgment. I'm not sure what it was with Joe Biden. Oh, Anita Hill and Clarence Thomas. That was not very good judgment to basically keep three women who could have substantiated at least part of what Anita Hill was saying from testifying.
Yeah, and installing an anti-choice justice on the Supreme Court in the process.
Allowing that to go forward, yes. Bad judgment. I think bad judgment.
I think he's saying judgment in the sort of Kissinger sense in that I know powerful people and people who know secrets and you don't. So regardless of what arguments this person can make, I am the person on the inside.
I have the secret information that says that I actually know what I'm talking about, but I can't tell you.
Was he comparing the protesters protesting against NAFTA to Trump protesters?
I think he was telling people don't go after them. This is not a Bernie rally.
Well, that's nice. I wouldn't have been
Trump rally.
surprised if he had, though, because like it's hard to say even nowadays what's left and what's right on trade, because the anti-globalization movement of the late 90s was very much a leftist movement. But since then, the majority of the anti-globalization sentiment around the world has been co-opted by the far right. So we have this weird situation where we have left parties and right parties both responding to dissatisfaction with globalization, but they have very different solutions. I'm wondering what...
I'd argue they also have different definitions of what globalization means.
That too. But like they're taking advantage of the problems caused by globalization and applying their own definitions to it and shaping people's understanding of it in a way that benefits them politically. And I'm not convinced that there is a good left populist answer on trade within the logic of our current system, but I think there are certainly better ones. I'm curious to get your take on it.
On what kind of trade regime that I would support?
Because like both Trump and Bernie support a certain kind of protectionism and economic nationalism, but I think Bernie's is better and Trump's is obviously fatuous.
I mean, to the extent that I would be protectionist, it would be through essentially requiring benchmarks for labor and environmental standards. And I would allow for, I mean, like the investor dispute, that was the best thing about the USMCA that got rid of that investor state dispute resolution system, which was problematic. That was basically exacting a cost from countries, states, I don't know if it went down to municipalities, trying to sort of just regulate as to what happens there in terms of trade. I mean, broadly speaking, I don't know that I would have tariffs, but I would impose the protectionism by creating benchmarks that must be achieved in terms of environmental and labor standards. And then I would make it harder for corporations to move their production. And I mean, part of it is not necessarily a function of would work out to be trade policy, but on some of it, it's also sort of like, I do think that we should have, controls and have the ability to produce some things that are important to our national security. And by the national security, I'm saying that broadly, not a militarized one, but like the ability to provide medicine for people.
I think the problem is like globalization came to mean labor arbitrage, and what it really needs to be is international international standards.
Yes. Here's Trish Regan. This is really bat crap crazy. This came up in our conversation with Weigel, but in terms of the mechanics of the campaign, for someone like Joe Biden and Donald Trump, it inhibits Donald Trump's ability to run the campaign that he wants to run. The existence of COVID-19. It helps, I think, Biden. I have some legitimate worries that he could win, and I think, not having to campaign as much would actually, in some ways, help him, I think. But one of the things that I think the Trump administration is very worried about is the shape of the economy, because they completely have underestimated the impact of COVID-19. They thought that they could just talk it away. They're still trying to do it. Trish Regan is on Fox Business, desperately trying to pretend that this is all just a hoax and a conspiracy. Reminder, the last guy who publicly went and said it was a hoax was Matt Gaetz, going around with a gas mask. He's since had a constituent die, and he is now on self-quarantine. Here is Trish Regan attempting to formulate an argument that appears to be written, but she's pretending it's not. This is just the most bizarre thing I've ever seen.
Chorus of hate being leveled at the president is nearing a crescendo as Democrats blame him and only him for a virus that originated halfway around the world. This is yet another attempt to impeach the president. And sadly, it seems they care very little for any of the destruction they are leaving in their wake. Losses in the stock market. All this, unfortunately, just part of the political casualties for them.
This is I can't help but think like the teleprompter was going awry. Right?
Or it's just her very first time reading through this.
Yeah, for them. So just to keep you up at home, this whole coronavirus thing is an impeachment scam. The idea being that we're going to sink the stock market, as if these professionals on the stock market, they can't pick out this coronavirus thing. Do you think this is real? Nah, I don't know. Chuck Schumer says it is, so maybe I should sell all my stocks.
All this, unfortunately, just part of the political casualties for them. This is a time to be united, not to be pointing fingers, not to be encouraging hate, and yet what do we see? We see the absolute opposite from the left tonight. Good evening, everyone. I am Trish Regan. The hate is boiling over, many in the liberal media using, and I mean using, coronavirus in an attempt to demonize and destroy the president.
Pause it. Using. And she means using.
And I mean utilizing.
Yes. That's exactly.
I don't think the president is.
Oh, you got to go back.
And the hate is boiling over, many in the liberal media using, and I mean using, coronavirus in an attempt to demonize and destroy the president.
I don't think the president is capable of telling us the truth about the coronavirus.
They have no plan. They have no plan. The virus is going to kill Americans regardless of their stupidity.
This administration right now looks like they couldn't organize a one-car parade. He is not going to be able to have his rallies, and it is going to psychologically torment him.
The president should lead, or else he should get out of the way. Stay on the golf course.
This may be Donald Trump's Katrina.
Yeah.
This is
an event that could take down a president.
There's no confidence in the president in anything he says or does. I wish he would just be quiet.
I see. This is impeachment all over again. And like with the Mueller investigation, like with Ukraine Gate, they don't care who they hurt.
Oh, my God.
Whether it be their need to create mass hysteria to encourage a market.
Like, I'm just fascinated by this. What is she? Is she now like in like this mode where she's trying to make it seem like she's thinking about this as like it's off the cuff? Like, go back just a little bit, because she has this look that she does this look off camera where I can't tell if it's her trying to signal to the teleprompter people like it's broken again, or if it's her trying to pretend like she's doing off the cuff. I find this just absolutely fascinating.
She's vibing.
And like with the Mueller investigation, like with Ukraine Gate, they don't care who they hurt. Whether it be their need to create mass hysteria
right there,
to encourage
like that.
a market sell-off, unlike anything we've seen recently, or whether it be to create mass hysteria in order to stop our economy dead in its tracks. Don't kid yourself. They told us how much they crave a recession as a way to get rid of Donald Trump.
I think it's just somebody who's very into their own voice and also doesn't have like the content to fill up something to say.
Do you think to a certain extent people are going like, stretch? Oh, wait, is she an opera singer? I just said check your chat. Wow. Let's see what we got here.
That was her great aria just now.
Trish. Wow.
I can do that.
That's what it's like in the studio.
Only God knows.
I don't know what's the avatar lighting.
Let the mighty soar. This country's far too young to die.
Jeez.
Happy 4th, everyone. God bless America.
Wow.
Wow. Are you going to take back the mean things you said about her now?
I forget about it. Impressive. She got quite pipes, like a lot of pipes. I wish she had sung the national anthem in the same way where it's like she's trying to pretend like she's making it up.
Or she should sing her monologues.
Yes, one or the other. But if she had just like taken that look in the middle of like, and the home of the brave, like that type of thing would have been nice. But
I didn't need to look it up to know that she was a pageant queen, and I'm guessing that was her talent.
There you go. Bernie hosted a roundtable COVID-19 in Michigan. Was this today or yesterday? Yesterday. And it went around the room in terms of talking about vaccinations. And this seems so self-evident. You know, well, we'll hear the clip.
Well, I was growing up, we got the polio vaccine for free, and nobody asked how you pay for it, because what they saw were children in iron lungs that were going to be damaged forever. How insane and cruel is it to suggest that we have to figure out how to pay for it when we can actually go to war and not ask one question, but to prevent this kind of a disease, we have to say, how can we pay for it? I'm sorry.
The cost of not paying for the vaccine is going to be orders of magnitude much more expensive.
Do I approve of spending a few cents for a vaccine rather than seeing people die or spending thousands of dollars on hospital care? Yeah, I kind of think it makes a little bit more sense to invest a few cents in a vaccine. Let me just say this again. And this deals with the pharmaceutical industry. It is a top priority. This is a no-brainer that you would ask a question like that almost talks about one of the very serious problems facing this country. Does anybody in their right mind believe that if you're rich, you should be able to afford a vaccine and save your life, but if you're poor, you got to die? Is that really where we're at the United States of America? So obviously, we will make vaccines free to every man, woman, and child. I, of course, would take that proposition a lot further. There are people who are rationing insulin right now because we're paying 10 times more for insulin in this country than Canada. And I will tell the pharmaceutical industry, if you don't lower your prices to what other countries are paying, we will make generic drugs that are affordable to all people. Yeah.
One thing we have to remember here, like, the value of a vaccine isn't just in protecting the individual who gets the vaccine. It's in protecting literally everyone who they come in contact with. I bet you if you polled all of those Fortune 500 CEOs whose stocks just took a tumble today and asked, hey, would you be willing to help fund that? I bet you they'd say, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's self-evident, right? I mean,
even if you're going to look at it in terms of return on investment, like these sorts of public health things are like
to
very
the extent
wise.
that they will go against what actually is savings, it is all about, in their mind, a moral hazard. And this is, one of the problems that we had with the banks and the Obama administration. We're seeing this right now where the Fed is already starting to bail out various banking institutions and providing liquidity and whatnot. But during the housing crisis, there was an opportunity. You could have gone one of two ways. One is you pay the homeowners, you give them money, they pay off their, pay down part of their principal, pay down part of their payments to the banks, right? They pay this to the banks. Or you pay the banks and you could have, I guess, theoretically said, compel them to cut down on those principles. I mean, that's more or less the same thing. Or you pay the banks and just hope that they now have the flexibility to ease up on those homeowners.
But the bankers would take a haircut in the first scenario, right?
Not necessarily, no. Not necessarily, no. I mean, I don't think they're taking a haircut in either way. That's my point, is that this was not about, we don't want to expend the extra dollars or that we don't want to create losers. It was literally about, and they gave the money to the banks and they said, please, we're asking, please give people a break on their mortgages. HAMP, HARP, these programs, the bankers did none of it. And the reason why they didn't do that was not that the bankers would take a haircut. Everybody had to take a little bit of a haircut in some instances. Some banks did not. But if you're paying the homeowners and they're giving the money to the banks, they're getting their money. The loans are turning out to not be such garbage. The problem is that they were afraid that it would create a moral hazard, that homeowners wouldn't learn their lesson. Now, it's okay for the bankers not to learn their lesson because they're super important. But that's basically it. That's what I'm saying. Like, that even if there is situations where it's like, it makes more sense. But the problem is that you give people an inch and they think they're a ruler. They want a mile.
They think they just deserve a home.
Right. Healthcare should be a right, but if you actually give it to them, they'll really think it should be a right.
You'd think the fact that this virus can infect rich people too would at least give them some pause.
Give them some time. Give them some time.
Also, I was thinking when you're talking to Weigel earlier, how bitterly ironic it's going to be if COVID-19 helps the candidate win the primary who would veto Medicare for all.
Yeah, I know. Here is, according to Biden, they both would, right? I mean, presumably Trump would, although maybe he wouldn't. I don't know. He's never said that if Democratic Senate and House, do I get to not go to jail? Then okay.
Honestly, he probably wouldn't. He's not going to take that hit.
Gonna be much
Reputation.
cheaper.
He doesn't care if people get health care.
I got to go out on my own on this now. I don't know.
You guys already did this. Fine. Can you call it Trump Care and then I'll sign it.
Trump Care is much better. Here is, speaking of Trump Care, here's Alex Azar. He's the head of the Health and Human Services on CNN New Day. You know, Health and Human Services. They just basically keep track of things like how many people have been tested, how many people have, well, like, do we know how many people have coronavirus in this country? Well, we can't really know because there are people out there who have it and they don't know. And they wouldn't even know to come and get tested. Oh, okay. How many people have been tested?
How many Americans have been tested at this point?
We don't know exactly how many because hundreds of thousands of our tests have gone out to private labs and hospitals that currently do not report into CDC. We're working with the CDC and those partners to get an IT reporting system up and running, hopefully this week, where we would be able to get that data to keep track of how many we're testing. We think we've got throughput at the moment, probably 10,000 a day, or it could be getting tested by the end of the week, 20,000 a day, according to a study by AEI that I heard about. We've got now 2.1 million tests available, 1.1 million have shipped. We actually have a surplus at the moment that are awaiting orders to be shipped.
But you don't know? You honestly don't know? You don't know how many people have been tested?
Well, because a private vendor shipped most of those 1.1 million that shipped were from a private vendor selling to their customers, and those entities that use their tests do not have to report back to CDC, but we're trying to set up a reporting system where they would in fact do that.
The Atlantic has made a bunch of calls to some of these organizations, and they estimate about 4,300 tests. 4,300 people have been tested. Does that seem ballpark accurate to you?
I just wouldn't want to speculate. Listen,
he just speculated. He just said the AIE was saying it could be up to 10,000 a day. Now, if you think it's up to 10,000 a day, and this dude says to you, has it been 4,300 over the weeks that we've been supposedly testing, which would come out to be about, I don't know, 500 a day. 10,000 a day being 20 times less than that. Wouldn't you say, well, I don't know about that?
I wouldn't want to speculate in a way that makes us look bad.
4,300 people have been tested. Does that seem ballpark accurate to you?
I just wouldn't want to speculate. Listen, my hallmark here is I'm going to tell you what I know, and I'm going to tell you what we do not know. We're about leveling with the American people and being transparent. And right now, I'm just telling you, when somebody sells a test kit to a private entity right now, we don't know when or if that's been used, but we are working with them to get that system set up.
South Korea, right? South Korea, Monday, February 20th, their first case reported. Within a week, they were testing more than 10,000 people a day. So within a week, South Korea was testing 10,000 people a day. The first case of community transmission in the United States was February 27th, which is what, 2.5, 3 weeks ago? And we're still not testing 10,000 people a day. We may not have tested 10,000 people total. So
well, John,
why is South Korea?
That,
but we're not. You just told me we're not testing 10,000 people a day. You said you hope by the end of the week.
I said AEI did a study saying there's throughput of at least 10,000 a day, they believe. But let's be clear.
But my question is, why was South Korea able to do this in a week, and it seems to be such a struggle for the United States?
It's not about ability. It's about what they needed to do. They had an explosive, immediate outburst and cluster becoming.
Can you imagine, like the guy is saying, I'm not speculating, but AEI, this right-wing think tank is, and I'm happy to pass that on. And I didn't know what that means, like a throughput. Unbelievable.
But how many more that private vendor can shove out the doors that you can't keep track of?
North Carolina has 3,000 tests available. 300. Oh, excuse me, 300.
Ohio didn't even have any earlier this week.
This guy's they're lying. It's unbelievable how much. And here's the problem. Here's the problem. This is going to we don't know how many people are walking around with the virus right now. It has an what do they call RO2, which basically means it doubles every day. And if we don't know how many people have it, we're not testing, so we can't take people off the sidelines. We can only like guess. Yeah, well, this is the one. This is what happened in Italy. And we did this chart yesterday, but it bears repeating. So today is March 10th. On March 7th, we hit where Italy was. So 3 days ago, we hit where Italy was on February 25th. 8 days after February 25th, in Italy, they shut all schools. So the equivalent for us would be March 15th.
Oh, but we can't shut down our schools because a lot of students are poor and don't have anywhere else to eat.
In New York City, something like 110,000 students are not just poor, they are homeless. And they rely on schools for their meals. By March 8th or 9th, the entire country has been shut down in Italy in terms of like restricting mobility. So that is like the functional equivalent of, the 9th, like you're talking 14 days. Theoretically, that would be like mid-March here. But of course, we can't do that. And we have no idea how many cases there are.
Don't worry. They have a plan.
In Kirkland, Washington, after days of pleading for COVID-19 in a nursing home in Kirkland, we finally got some and screened 35 of their residents. 31 came back positive. I mean, look, on one hand, apparently kids, they don't get it. But they can be carriers. People of my age, younger, it can hit them as like a bad flu that they get into the hospital. Older folks, it can be very, very dangerous and lethal. But it's also, we're talking about like what it's going to take now that we have given the virus such a head start, what it's going to take to contain it. And the whole key to this is being able to flatten the curve, as it were, the surge of cases, so that our limited extra capacity in our hospitals, which is very limited, can handle, we don't have like this huge rush. It's almost like a rush on the banks, if you will. But you can shut the banks and say, like, we're only going to give out, $500 a day or something. You can't do that when it comes to medical care and not have people have real problems. So this is
hastening the virus through the system is exactly what you don't want to do.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like ripping off a Band-Aid. I saw some people saying that Mike Pence's plan is probably just to stall until he can figure out a way to blame the virus on gay people.
Yeah, and I think Trump's is to stall until he can blame it on Mike Pence. Yes. Calling from a 610 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Sam, Mike from Pennsylvania.
Who's this?
Are you there?
Yeah, who's this?
Mike from Pennsylvania.
Mike from Pennsylvania.
How are you, Sam?
I'm well. How are you?
Not well. Not well. I called in to rant about Warren, Sam.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, it's again a little premature, but yes.
She has to be punished. She has to be persona non grata for the progressive movement. Like the pettiness of the decision to not endorse Bernie, staying in the race way after she was non-viable, is malignant narcissism, especially when you combine it with 2016, where she didn't endorse during a very close race in her home state of Massachusetts that Hillary Clinton ended up pulling out. That was one of the states that tanked Bernie's campaign in 2016 as well. This time around, I mean, she finished, a pathetic 4th or 5th in Nevada. There was no path for weeks. And her staying in lost Massachusetts for Bernie, lost Maine for Bernie, lost Texas for Bernie. A totally different race if she had dropped out and endorsed Bernie before South Carolina. So, I mean, for us to pretend like she's still our ally because of what? When the rubber met the road, she was doing exactly what the establishment needed to kneecap Bernie. Now, I have problems with Bernie's campaign too, but let's be real here.
Well, I mean, let's be real here. I mean, it's hard to say at one point, like, she's driven by egotism and narcissism, and that, like, the reason why she didn't drop out of the campaign before South Carolina is because she wanted to help the establishment. I mean, if she wanted to help the establishment, she's doing a very piss poor job of making sure they understand that she's helping them. I mean, I think, like...
It doesn't matter if she's ineffective in gaining political capital for herself. We can only look at the consequences.
Well, that's true, but, you know, you could also...
Joe Biden is going to lose to Trump. Like, we all know this, right?
Well...
Like, the guy can't string together 3 sentences. You think he's going to debate Trump? This is a joke.
Yeah, no, I agree.
We're praying for economic crash.
Well, I understand, but I think it's like, look, I think it's unreasonable to assume that Elizabeth Warren is going to drop out of the race before South Carolina. That just seems to me to be an unreasonable expectation.
Okay, after South Carolina, then.
I would have imagined. No, I mean, I think she dropped out where it seems reasonable to me. I mean, campaigns stay in it. You know this. Campaigns, there's a lot invested. People, but I would have dropped out. I think when she did, frankly. But just the endorsement is the issue. I don't know if it would have made a difference or not.
Let's back this up here. She finished a distant 3rd in Iowa. What was it, 4th or 5th in New Hampshire? That's a dead campaign, Sam. Like, that. There's never. I mean, like, it's a joke. She was never leading in any of the Nevada polls, none of the South Carolina polls. The polls showing her losing her home state were accurate. Like, where was it was magical thinking the whole time. And meanwhile, Pete Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar somewhere have found the clue to drop out and support their ideological ally just in time to help consolidate support behind him. And then had Warren responded by dropping out herself, does anyone think that the results would not have been different in those states I mentioned, Maine, Massachusetts, and Texas? Just look at the numbers. It seems pretty clear to me.
Well, yes, but
had those people would have gone to Bernie. Especially with an endorsement.
I understand what you're saying, but the bottom line is, it's like your expectations are just different people have agency. They're pursuing what they want. I mean, I think.
So we can't blame her consultants then. We can't blame her advisors. We have to blame her because she's ultimately the decision maker.
Fine. But my point is that, like, I think, like, she's made it clear by not endorsing that she's not she's made it clear by not endorsing that she's not aligned with this movement.
So what's the movement going to do about it?
Well,
this is why the left is toothless. Because we beg for scraps.
What is it that But what is it that you expect the movement to do now? Go and egg her house?
I expect us to make a concerted effort to primary her.
I mean, I would not be surprised
if that's 4 years
that's
from now, but it is what it is.
I mean, look, I think it's. I think there's a good chance that you'll find people who are interested in doing that. It is 4 years from now. I think, like, there'll be plenty of time to sort of plan that 4 years from now. Who knows? Maybe she won't even run for re-election. I mean, I have no idea what she's doing.
That would be a good outcome.
But yeah, I can understand why people are angry. I think it's irrational to have assumed that they were going to drop out before Super Tuesday. I mean, I just think that.
Well, okay. Well, then this is the other side of the coin. Then what is wrong with the Bernie Sanders political operation that there is no fear? If this was like on Hillary Clinton, the one thing you can say of her is, people were scared of crossing Hillary Clinton. She didn't hold any positions of power when she was running, yet she was able to line people up because of fear of the response. But yet, with Bernie, he's still saying Joe Biden is my friend, right? About to walk into a buzzsaw here. Now, listen, maybe the polls will be wrong and Bernie will have a miracle, but this is about to be the end of about 5 years of progressive development, and the result is going to be someone who's more conservative than Hillary Clinton.
Right.
I mean, like, let's be sober, let's be rational about what we're facing here. A Democratic Party that has moved to the right. And after 4 years of Trump, I never thought that could be possible.
Well,
But
then, Mike, I would say to you, honestly, you're being naive, because you can go back and I mean, I don't know if I said it on that day that Jimmy Dore called in, but I certainly said, let me finish. I certainly said throughout 2016 that my experience with the Democratic Party is, even after George Bush, we got Barack Obama. After Ronald Reagan, we got Bill Clinton. When and you can say it's the Democratic Party, but it's millions of people. I mean, it's not the apparatus as much as it is like this desire to just go back to sleep. There's a reason why, Biden's up there going like, just be quiet, or Buttigieg is like, go to sleep, because they know that on some level, like, after people have been feeling traumatized by a right-wing presidency, that all they want to do is stop thinking about politics. And so on some level, like, this was the miscalculation of people who thought that Donald Trump would bring us to nirvana. And anybody who thought that, like, look, anything's possible. But anybody who thought that was also being naive. I mean, there's plenty of blame to go around here. Listen, I think there's also a decent argument that, if it's the case that Elizabeth Warren is, as driven by, was mad about the Massachusetts thing, which I think I agree with you, is incredibly petty.
Childish.
What it's to the point where it's very hard for me to believe, because it seems so ridiculous. But if that's the case, then there was an obligation for people in the Sanders campaign to be aware of that. Right? I mean, if her support was so coveted, then you should be aware, like, oh, she's going to have an incredibly juvenile reaction to this. She doesn't have any actual relationship with this issue set, beyond what she personally, I mean, I'm not in a position to know that. To the extent that I've ever had a conversation with her, it's been like, nice to meet you. And so you would think that the professionals who've been working, presumably, close to her or they would know this. I mean, there's plenty of blame to go around.
I mean, listen, Sam, I'm not trying to take Bernie off the hook here, but like, Elizabeth Warren, it was irrational for pretty much the entire time she was in the race, except for maybe a 2-week period where she had a bump. Like, if she actually believed in any of these issues, she would have operated differently. And if the shoe was on the other foot, do you think that Bernie Sanders wouldn't have dropped out and endorsed her? I just posed that question to you.
Oh, no. I mean, look, I certainly like to believe he would, and I do believe he would. If
Elizabeth Warren had won the first 3 states, Bernie Sanders, I mean, like, it's insane. There's no effing way that he would have stated, and then to not endorse after Super Tuesday as well.
I agree.
Joe Biden Joe Biden is going to win. Now, supposedly, she entered politics because of Joe Biden's big bad bankruptcy bill.
I agree.
She spent more time complaining about Bernie bros than she did anything about bankruptcy. Tell me, and the reason why I'm so frustrated is because the left in America, as opposed to lefts around the world, has no teeth, has no anger, and is just going to passively accept what was one of the worst rat I've ever seen.
Mike. Well, I don't know what you're suggesting. We should right now dedicate our resources to priming her 4 years from now. I mean, yes, I think that should happen. But I think there's still a race going on here. I'm not as convinced as you are that it's completely, without any hope. I think.
Listen, I'm not saying it's complete without any hope, but I'm looking at the data here, and it's pretty dire.
It's dire, without a doubt. But there's going to be time. There's going to be time.
And I think the left. I think she's already shed the left support. I'm not super worried about like sending more of a message. The snakes thing is going to follow her, frankly.
Hey, Mike, can I say two things that may or may not make you feel any better?
Sure.
So the first thing I want to say is I'm not convinced a Warren endorsement would help Bernie that much. I think her supporters are highly educated, and their politics, they already know what they are. I think it includes a lot of decent left liberals who are genuinely altruistic and supported her for a combination of class politics and identity politics who will go to Bernie. But I think there is a larger group that was always fine with centrist politics. They supported Hillary Clinton, and, maybe they had some kind of shallow girl boss feminism, but absent a woman to vote for, they're going to default to the candidate who won't raise their taxes. And I think that's a much larger group because at the end of the day, most people do vote in their own interest. Most people vote for their class interests.
My sense is that the value of her endorsement, would not be to necessarily bring a huge number of votes from her camp necessarily. Maybe some would be there. But for a lot of the voters out there who don't see ideology, which I think there's a lot, frankly, I think that could be, yes, the vast majority, that would have signaled to them that Bernie could win and has like some esteem in the party. To some extent, fair. That's why I think it was more relevant for it to happen after Super Tuesday than after than going into Super Tuesday, because I feel like it would have been lost. I feel like the peak impact for that would have been Warren coming back and saying to the entire, sort of like party apparatus, well, all the cachet that I have, I'm willing to put it here with Bernie, say that he can win. The idea is that she's doing this for the sake of the issue set. But I listen, I agree with you. I think like there is a lot of the left is going to, if Sanders doesn't win, and again, like I think it's not necessarily helpful to assume that it's over at this point. The campaign, they're going to stay in. They're going to stay in for that debate. And you could the Biden people could make the same argument about Sanders staying in until that debate for in the same way that you are about Warren. It really just depends on your perspective. I'm sitting here with an email from a listener who's out there, who's, canvassing in Illinois, and he's talking to the former Warren people. They like Bernie, but they feel as though Bernie supporters scorned them. And
this is a comment from Warren. If Warren went out there and pushed back on that and was like, listen, everybody gets passionate. I love Bernie Sanders. If he supports the issues, I support him. He's been my ally. You got to support Bernie. All those
without a doubt,
go away.
Without a doubt,
he's fucking endorsing them. I'm sorry.
Well, no, without a doubt, I think that's the case. I don't think this is just like, I don't think they're all sitting there watching, that interview with Rachel Maddow and making their decision based upon what she's saying there. I think they're experiencing it on some level. But yes, there was that was, and to be honest with you, like I think they feel that, and I frankly find that just sort of like stunningly childish.
Like, yes, because they have a stunningly childish candidate they supported. This is the shocking part of it is fundamentally, like, we are looking at a situation where, like, I disagree with you about the prior to Super Tuesday thing, just because people don't vote for a dropped-out candidate. So, if Warren endorses Bernie, and that blunts the narrative of everybody's endorsing Biden after his huge win, and then it's like, oh, actually, Elizabeth Warren is saying support Bernie, and we've got a long race here, and she's saying the issues are important, and it disrupts an entire news cycle, and and frankly, just materially changes the math in places like I already mentioned 5 times.
Right.
To me, like the Bernie political operation, I don't know if you remember this, Sam, but I called you this was 18 months ago. And I said, my concern with Bernie Sanders is I know the Bernie Sanders political people and I know the Warren political people. And the Bernie political people suck. And I was very concerned about them building coalitions. And what happened? Exactly what I feared. They were incapable of getting people that are office-holding progressives behind them. Like John Fetterman was a nerd here in Pennsylvania. They didn't do anything. They didn't get Larry Krasner in Philadelphia, DA, the progressive DA. That is on the Bernie people.
Yeah.
That's on the Bernie political campaign. What the fuck are they doing? I mean, there was people, Clyburn didn't even get talked to, according to him. Are you shitting me? It's one thing to get scorned. I get it. It doesn't feel good when people say no.
But wait a second.
Even
But wait a second. Do you think that is just exclusively the campaign people, or do you think that also could be a reflection of Bernie Sanders?
I mean, maybe it's a reflection of Bernie. I'm fine.
I mean, I saw Bernie on talking about the Clyburn thing where he said, I know how he votes. I know his politics. I agree with you. You call up and you say, I know how you vote. I know your politics. I want your vote. I want your endorsement. If you don't give it to me, I still have respect for you. End of conversation. I mean, it's not like.
And then he can't say he didn't even bother because that's even.
Of course.
Because it seems like
of course. I agree with you.
Is that really what was reported? Because I think I'm looking at this Clyburn thing now, and it's basically like Clyburn said, I don't need to be courted for. I just lost where it is on this page, but I don't need to be courted. What did he actually say? Bernie didn't call him. He says.
I think Bernie said he didn't call him. I saw an interview where Bernie was asked.
Here's what he said. I don't need to be courted. I had lots of conversations with almost every one of the candidates. Maybe Bernie wasn't one of those, but
yeah. I mean, it's not. There's a difference between courted and just sort of here's here
Okay,
you go.
well, how do you explain exactly what I'm talking about with the other people? I named other people.
No, I agree with you.
So,
I agree with you.
I
agree with you.
That's where I'm expert. Pennsylvania. I know these fucking people. Excuse my F-bomb again.
Take it easy. Take it easy.
But
this isn't Twitch, buddy.
I mean, he got Helen Geim,
well,
but it was kind of after he won Nevada, she's a Philadelphia City Council top vote getter, progressive. There's a huge progressive movement, even here in Pennsylvania, that is completely not even aligned behind Bernie. And so when people are talking about he needed to broaden his appeal, my reaction is he didn't even consolidate the left. What the hell happened? What is going on?
All right.
Can I say the second thing that may or may not make you feel better? Because I can tell you're hurting right now. So I think we need to broaden it out a little bit. And I think this movement behind Bernie is on some level very new. And I think this new, whatever you want to call it, movement for class struggle, social democracy, democratic socialism, whatever, is learning a lesson that the anti-capitalist left has known for a long time now, which is you can form a popular front with people to the right of you, but it's going to be a temporary tactical alliance, and you cannot rely on those people in the long term. And we know this about left liberals, progressive Democrats, whatever. That is a different ethos than the Bernie Sanders class struggle, social democracy ethos. So I hope that you can kind of put that in perspective and make it less about Warren as a candidate and less about her campaign and more about the very real differences in between the things that you're fighting for.
Well, but I mean, I think what Mike is also saying is that that the Sanders campaign didn't even do the first part of what you're talking about. Didn't even make the tactical relationships on the ground in these places.
Sure, but also I've been seeing a lot of people making it about Warren, and we cannot rely on left liberals to help us out in any way beyond the immediate short term, and even then, not so much. And I think the anti-capitalist left has learned this lesson over and over again. It's learned this about the liberal left. It's learned this about the social democratic left. I think that's a more medium-term alliance that we can have together. So you and I are still friends. But do you see what I'm getting at?
I mean, I do. I of course I do. But, you know, ultimately, battles are one in material reality, and not like sometimes the Red Army has to beat the White Army. And right now, we just got whipped. And I'm concerned that we didn't have bullets, for fuck's sake. I'm sorry for stretching the analogy. But
Jesus.
The point is, like, this is a huge catastrophe in my mind. And, you know, where are we going from here? Like, we have 30-year-olds as now the new head of the movement, and that concerns me greatly. Like, we don't have the generational heft and the people that are actually holding levers of power. So what are we waiting, 20 years? Well, I'm sorry, global climate change is going to destroy us. I mean, they're talking about bailing out shale companies right now.
Well, I mean, here's another inconvenient fact, which is for Bernie to win and for a Democratic Socialist to run a campaign right now, given the lack of independent working class institutions in this country, it's a Hail Mary. And it's a Hail Mary because you're right, we don't have that much time. And it would be great. It would be great if it worked. And I still hope it does. And it's not over yet. But at the end of the day, there are really no shortcuts to building these kinds of independent working class institutions that people will trust, that people will look to. Because absent that, what do we have? We have the church, we have the Democratic Party signaling to people who's going to protect their interests and keep them safe. And even some unions have been making some bad decisions because when labor's on its back, you know this, they start to make some deals just so that they continue to exist. So if we really, really want to see positive change in this country and in this world, we need to be working on building those institutions.
Mike, you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
All right. Well, we've got to end the show, but of course, people can go and hear you continue on this at the Central Committee. It's like the Central Committee show today.
I think I'm going to be on again soon. So,
all right. Well, we're going to be back on here in about. All right. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate the call. I mean, I hear you. I just think. I mean, yeah. Trying to pace it. I don't want to be. I don't want to prematurely be offering any sort of eulogies to the Sanders campaign, but I understand what you're saying. We've got time for that.
Certainly.
A lot of it could be we could be staying in our houses for the next 6 months anyways.
I'm hoping to be less depressing and more like inspiring people that the fight continues.
Yes. I understand the anger and the frustration. I mean, believe me, I feel like this is a huge missed opportunity. I for one, I have a slightly different perspective on what would have helped, but all right, folks, going to see you in about 5 hours or so. We will be back here for coverage of tonight, the big primary. 3Ms, we're calling it. Maybe not. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But check it out. We'll be back here live. Sorry we didn't get to more calls. Tomorrow, we'll probably just open up. I don't know. We'll see. I'm not going to promise anything because I never come through on that. All right, folks. See you tonight.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bulb. But finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I guess somewhere the choice was made for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive shifted in and out of gear.